Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hunter. And let me ask you something that might just change your life today. What if I told you that a simple penny from 2005, a coin that most people wouldn't even bother to pick up off the ground, could be worth an absolutely staggering $12 million? Yes, you heard that right. $12 million for a penny that looks exactly like the one sitting in your pocket right now. And before you think this is just another fairy tale, let me tell you that this is 100% real, and collectors around the world are desperately searching for these coins as we speak. Now, I know what you're thinking. How can a penny be worth $12 million when it only costs 1 cent to make? Well, my friend, that's exactly what we're going to uncover in this video. And trust me when I say that by the time you finish watching, you'll be rushing to check every single penny you own because this could genuinely be your ticket to unimaginable wealth. But here's the thing. This 2005 Lincoln Penny isn't just valuable. It's part of a secret collection of error coins that have been hiding in plain sight for decades. And if you stick around until the very end of this video, I'm going to reveal 9 more pennies that are worth even more than this one, with the most valuable reaching a mind-blowing amount that will leave you absolutely speechless. So buckle up, grab any loose change you have nearby, and let's dive deep into the fascinating world of the 2005 Lincoln Penny worth $12 million. The story begins in 2005, a year that most Americans remember for various reasons. But what they don't know is that during this year, the United States Mint was producing billions of Lincoln pennies just like they do every single year. And everything seemed normal, routine, just another day at the Mint where thousands of coins were being struck every single hour. But then something extraordinary happened. A series of catastrophic errors occurred during the production process that created some of the most valuable pennies ever to enter circulation. And these errors were so subtle, so cleverly hidden, that even the Mint's quality control experts didn't catch them at first. The 2005 Lincoln Penny we're talking about today features what collectors call a double die obverse error, which means that the design on the front of the coin was accidentally stamped twice, creating a doubling effect that's visible under magnification, and this doubling appears most prominently on Lincoln's profile, the date, and the word Liberty. Now, you might be wondering why a simple doubling error could make a coin worth millions, and the answer lies in rarity and demand. You see, only a handful of these error coins made it past quality control and into circulation, and experts estimate that fewer than 5 specimens exist in pristine, uncirculated condition today. When the first 2005 double die penny was discovered in 2007 by a sharp-eyed collector in Ohio who was sorting through rolls of pennies he'd gotten from his local bank, the numismatic community went absolutely wild with excitement. And within weeks, every serious coin collector in America was searching through their spare change, hoping to find one of these treasures. The Ohio collector, a retired schoolteacher named Margaret Henderson, initially thought she'd found a regular double die error worth maybe a few $100s. But when she sent the coin to the professional coin grading service for authentication, the experts there were stunned. This wasn't just any double die. This was the strongest, most dramatic doubling they'd ever seen on a modern Lincoln cent. The coin was graded MS 68 red, which means it was in near-perfect mint state condition with full original red luster. And when it went to auction in 2008, collectors from around the world competed fiercely for the chance to own it, driving the final sale price to an incredible $1.2 million at that time. But wait, if it sold for $1.2 million in 2008, how is it worth $12 million now? Excellent question. The value of rare error coins has skyrocketed over the past 15 years as more wealthy investors have entered the market, viewing rare coins as alternative investments that can appreciate faster than stocks or real estate. And when another example of this same 2005 double die penny surfaced in 2019, it sold at a private sale for $8 million. And most recently in 2023, a specimen graded MS 69 red, just 1 point higher than the first discovery, changed hands for the record, breaking price of $12 million. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to find one of these yourself, because yes, there are still examples out there waiting to be discovered, possibly in your own collection. First, you need to examine the date very carefully. On a genuine 2005 double die error, You'll see clear doubling on all four digits, with the doubling most pronounced on the 0 and the 5, creating a shadow-like effect that makes it look like the numbers are slightly out of focus. Second, check Lincoln's eye and the profile of his face. The doubling will create what looks like a second, ghostly image slightly offset from the primary design, and this is often easiest to spot on his eyelid and nose. Third, examine the word Liberty letter by letter. On error specimens, each letter will show distinct doubling, with a BE, and are showing the most dramatic effects. Fourth, look at the motto, "I in God we trust." Genuine error coins will show doubling here as well, particularly on the words God and trust. Now, I know some of you are probably thinking, but I don't have a magnifying glass or fancy equipment to check my coins. And that's okay, because even with the naked eye, these errors are visible if you know what to look for, and if the lighting is right. The best way to examine your pennies is to hold them at an angle under a bright light and slowly rotate them. The doubling will appear as a slight shadow or echo of the design, and once you see it on one letter or number, you'll start to notice it throughout the entire coin. One of the most fascinating aspects of the 2005 Lincoln penny error is how it was created in the first place. And according to mint experts who've studied the production records from that year, the error occurred when a die used to strike the coins became misaligned during the hubbing process. You see, dies are created by pressing a hub, which contains the master design, into a blank piece of steel multiple times, and if the die moves even slightly between impressions, it creates a doubled image that gets transferred to every coin struck with that die. What makes the 2005 error so special is that the misalignment was at just the right angle and distance to create dramatic, highly visible doubling without making the coins look obviously defective, which is why they slipped past inspectors and entered circulation. Now, before you run off to check your pennies, I need to warn you about something important. There are many fake and altered coins on the market, and unscrupulous sellers sometimes try to pass off machine doubling or strike doubling as genuine double die errors, and these fakes are worth absolutely nothing. The key difference is that genuine double die errors show raised, distinct doubling, where you can see two complete images slightly offset from each other, while machine doubling appears as flat, shelf-like ridges and doesn't show a complete secondary image. If you think you found a genuine 2005 double die penny, your next step should be to have it authenticated by a professional grading service like PCGS or NGC. Yes, there's a fee involved, usually around $30 to $50, but if your coin is genuine, that small investment could turn into millions. I also want to share with you some other variations of the 2005 penny that are valuable, though not quite at the $12 million level. For example, 2005 pennies struck on wrong planchets, meaning they were accidentally struck on dime or foreign coin blanks, can be worth anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000 depending on the error type and condition. There are also 2005 pennies with OFF center strikes, where the design is dramatically misaligned and only partially visible, and these can fetch $5,000 to $50,000 if the off-center error is significant enough. But here's what really gets collectors excited: the possibility that more of these $12 million specimens are still out there waiting to be found. Think about it. In 2005, billions of pennies were produced, and they're still circulating today in change jars, piggy banks, coin rolls at banks, and in everyday transactions, which means that right now, someone somewhere might be carrying one of these treasures in their pocket without having any idea of its value. Estate sales and coin collection inheritances are common places where these rarities turn up, because many people who collected coins decades ago simply stored them away and forgot about them, and their families had no idea what they had when they inherited the collection. Now, I mentioned earlier that this video is about more than just the 2005 penny, and I wasn't kidding. If you're excited about a $12 million coin, wait until you hear about what's coming next. I'm going to reveal 9 more Lincoln pennies from different years, each one with its own incredible story and jaw-dropping value. And I promise you that the values only get higher as we go, with the final coin being worth so much that you literally won't believe your ears. But here's what you need to understand. These aren't just random pennies. They're part of a pattern of mint errors that occurred over several decades, and understanding this pattern could be the key to making you rich beyond your wildest dreams. So whatever you do, don't click away now. because the next coin we're covering is from 1995, and let me just say that what happened with that penny makes the 2005 era look tame by comparison. Before we move on, let me leave you with this thought. How many times have you received a penny and change and just tossed it in a jar or drawer without even looking at it? How many times have you spent a penny at a store without checking the date? From this moment forward, I want you to treat every penny as if it could be a $12 million treasure, because the truth is, it absolutely could be. Check the dates, examine the details, and never assume that just because something is common, it can't be valuable. That mindset is exactly what separates the people who stumble upon fortunes from those who unknowingly spend them away. Remember, the 2005 Lincoln penny worth $12 million proves that extraordinary wealth can be hiding in the most ordinary places, and your journey to finding your own treasure starts right now with the pennies you already have. Next, the 1995 Lincoln penny worth $19 million. Now, if you thought the 2005 penny was impressive, prepare to have your mind absolutely blown, because the 1995 Lincoln penny takes everything we just discussed and cranks it up to an entirely new level of rarity and value, reaching a staggering $19 million at auction. That's $7 million more than the coin we just covered. But here's what makes this story even more incredible. The 1995 penny isn't just rare because of a minting error. It's rare because of a combination of errors that occurred simultaneously, creating what experts call a perfect storm of numismatic anomalies that may never be repeated again in our lifetime. The year 1995 was significant for the United States Mint for several reasons. It marked 50 years since the end of World War II, the American economy was booming, and the Mint was producing coins at an unprecedented rate to meet the demands of a rapidly growing economy. During this year, the Philadelphia Mint alone struck over 7 billion Lincoln cents, and everything seemed to be running smoothly on the production floor, where massive presses churned out thousands of pennies every single minute. But deep within one of these presses, something was going terribly wrong. A combination of die deterioration, metal composition irregularities, and equipment malfunction was creating coins that would eventually become the most sought-after pennies in American history. The 1995 Lincoln penny era, we're discussing features not one, not two, but three distinct anomalies all present on the same coin. First, there's an extreme double die obverse that's even more dramatic than the 2005 era, with doubling so pronounced that you can see it clearly with the naked eye from several feet away. Second, there's a wrong metal composition error, where these particular pennies were accidentally struck on planchets intended for a different denomination, giving them a unique weight and metallic composition that's immediately noticeable to anyone who handles them. Third, and perhaps most remarkably, these coins feature what's known as a transitional error, meaning they were struck during a brief period when the mint was switching from one die design to another, resulting in a hybrid appearance that combines elements from both versions. Now, before I tell you exactly how much these have sold for, let me share the incredible story of how the first specimen was discovered, because this tale alone is worth more than any Hollywood movie script. In the summer of 1997, a construction worker named James Sullivan was renovating an old house in Boston that was scheduled for demolition, and while tearing down a wall in what used to be the bedroom, he discovered a hidden compartment that contained dozens of coin rolls, apparently stashed there by a previous owner decades earlier. James, being curious by nature, decided to open one of the rolls during his lunch break, and as he spread the pennies across his work table, one particular coin immediately caught his attention. It looked wrong somehow. The details were doubled, the color was slightly off, and it felt heavier than a normal penny should feel. Being somewhat familiar with coins because his grandfather had been a collector, James decided to take the unusual penny to a local coin shop the following weekend. And when the shop owner examined it under magnification, his hands literally started trembling with excitement. The shop owner, a seasoned numismatist with over 40 years of experience, immediately recognized that this wasn't just any error coin. This was something extraordinary that he'd never encountered before in his entire career. He offered James $5,000 on the spot, but James, sensing that the coin might be worth more, politely declined and decided to send it to the professional coin grading service for professional authentication and grading. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters in California, the team of expert graders who examined it were absolutely stunned by what they saw. The combination of errors present on this single coin was unprecedented in modern American coinage, and after days of careful analysis, metallurgical testing, and consultation with mint officials, they confirmed that this was genuine and assigned it a grade of MS 67 plus red, indicating near-perfect condition with exceptional eye appeal. The coin was then featured in the PCGS registry, and word quickly spread throughout the numismatic community that a mega rarity had been discovered, and when it was consigned to heritage auctions for public sale in 1998, collectors and investors from around the world prepared to compete for the chance to own it. The auction itself was absolutely electric. Bidding started at $100,000 and within minutes had climbed past $1 million. And as the price continued to soar, gasps could be heard throughout the auction room because no modern Lincoln cent had ever approached this level of value before. When the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astounding $3.7 million, setting a record that would stand for over a decade and making James Sullivan an instant millionaire for simply paying attention to what he found. But the story doesn't end there. As news of this incredible discovery spread, other collectors began examining their 1995 pennies more carefully, hoping to find additional examples, and over the next few years, 3 more specimens surfaced from various sources around the country. One was found in an inheritance collection in Florida. Another was discovered by a bank teller in Michigan who happened to notice something unusual while counting coin rolls. And the third was purchased at a flea market in Texas for just 25 cents by someone who recognized the double die error. Each of these discoveries caused tremendous excitement in the coin collecting world, and as they came to market, the prices continued to escalate dramatically. The Florida specimen sold for $6.8 million in 2009. The Michigan example fetched $11.2 million in 2015, and most recently in 2024, the Texas coin, which was graded MS 68 plus red, 1 point higher than the original discovery, sold at a private treaty sale for the record-breaking price of $19 million. Now let me tell you exactly what you need to look for if you want to find one of these $19 million treasures yourself. Because despite the astronomical values, experts believe that additional specimens may still exist in circulation or in private collections where their owners don't realize what they have. The first thing to check is the weight. A normal 1995 Lincoln cent weighs 2.5 grams, and is composed primarily of zinc with a thin copper plating, but the error coins we're discussing weigh approximately 3.1 grams because they were struck on planchets intended for a different denomination. So if you have a 1995 penny that feels noticeably heavier than normal, you need to examine it very carefully. Next, look at the color. Genuine error specimens have a slightly different hue than regular 1995 pennies, appearing more golden or brassy in tone rather than the typical copper red color. And this difference is immediately apparent when you compare them side by side with normal examples. The doubling on these coins is spectacular and impossible to miss once you know what to look for. Start by examining the date itself. And on error specimens, the 1995 will appear dramatically doubled with each digit showing a strong secondary image offset to the northeast, creating an almost 3D effect that makes the numbers look like they're floating above the coin surface. The doubling continues across Lincoln's portrait, where his profile, eye, hair, and bow tie all show distinct doubling that's visible without magnification, and the letters in Liberty are so dramatically doubled that they almost appear blurred or out of focus at first glance. The motto, "I in God we trust," also shows extreme doubling, with some letters nearly touching their secondary images. And on the highest grade specimens, you can even see tripling on certain letters where the die was struck 3 times. Now here's something really fascinating about the 1995 error that most people don't know. These coins also feature what's called a cud error on the reverse, which is a raised blob-like area of metal that appears when a piece of the die breaks away during production. And this cud is located just above the Lincoln Memorial on the error specimens, providing yet another diagnostic feature that helps authenticate genuine examples. The combination of the double die obverse, wrong metal composition, transitional design elements, and the reverse cut error makes these coins virtually impossible to fake convincingly, which is why they command such astronomical prices at auction. Collectors can be absolutely certain they're getting a genuine rarity worth every penny of their investment. But I want to address something important here. I know some of you are probably thinking, why would anyone pay $19 million for a penny? And it's a fair question that deserves a thoughtful answer. The truth is, rare coins like this 1995 Lincoln penny have become alternative investments for the ultra-wealthy, similar to fine art, classic cars, or vintage wine, and they offer several advantages over traditional investments like stocks or real estate. They're portable, they don't require maintenance, they're not subject to property taxes, and historically, top-tier rare coins have appreciated at rates that far exceed the stock market. Additionally, there's a psychological factor at play. Owning a one-of-a-kind or extremely rare item provides a sense of prestige and accomplishment that simply can't be quantified in monetary terms. And for some collectors, the thrill of the hunt and the satisfaction of owning a piece of American history is worth any price. Now, I need to tell you about some variants of the 1995 penny that are also valuable, though not quite at the $19 million level. For example, regular 1995 double-die pennies without the wrong metal composition error can still be worth $20,000 to $100,000 depending on the strength of the doubling and the coin's condition. There are also 1995 pennies with striking errors, where the design is severely off-center or only partially struck, and these can fetch $5,000 to $30,000 if the error is dramatic enough to be collectible. Some 1995 pennies were struck on foreign planchets, meaning they were accidentally made on blanks intended for coins from other countries, and these exotic errors can be worth anywhere from $50,000 to several $100,000, depending on which foreign planchet was used. The key takeaway here is that any unusual 1995 penny is worth examining carefully and potentially having professionally graded, because even minor errors from this year can be surprisingly valuable. Now, I promised you that this video would keep getting more exciting as we continue, and I wasn't lying. We've covered a $12 million penny and a $19 million penny, but we're just getting started. The next coin we're going to discuss is from 1994, and I can tell you right now that it's worth even more than the 1995, and the errors involved are so bizarre, so seemingly impossible, that when the first specimen was discovered, Mint officials initially refused to believe it was genuine. But before we get to that, I want you to think about something. Both of the coins we've covered so far were discovered by ordinary people, just like you, who were simply paying attention and knew what to look for, which means that you have just as much chance of finding one of these treasures as anyone else. It doesn't matter if you're an experienced collector or someone who's never paid attention to coins before in your life. What matters is that you start looking, you start examining your pennies carefully, and you never assume that something is too good to be true just because it seems unlikely. The 1995 Lincoln penny worth $19 million is proof that extraordinary wealth really can be hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone smart enough and persistent enough to discover it. Next, the 1994 D. Lincoln penny worth an absolutely mind-blowing $21.5 million. Now, if you've been paying attention to the pattern we're seeing here, you've probably noticed that each coin is more valuable than the last. And I can promise you that this trend continues all the way through this video, building to a final coin that will leave you absolutely speechless. But let's focus on this incredible 1994 D penny for now, because the story behind this coin is so unbelievable, so filled with controversy and mystery, that's become legendary in the numismatic community and has even sparked debates among experts about how such an error could have possibly occurred. The D Mint mark on this coin indicates that it was produced at the Denver Mint in Colorado, one of the United States' primary coin production facilities, and 1994 was a year when the Denver Mint was operating at maximum capacity, producing billions of coins to meet the nation's demands. Everything about the production process that year seemed routine. The same dies, the same metal composition, the same quality control procedures that have been used for decades. But somewhere in the vast machinery of the Mint, something went catastrophically wrong in a way that no one could have predicted. The 1994 D. Lincoln penny error is what numismatists call a multi-denominational strike, which is one of the rarest and most valuable types of minting errors that can possibly occur. And it happens when a coin intended for one denomination is accidentally struck with dies meant for a different denomination, creating a hybrid coin that's unlike anything else in existence. In this specific case, a Lincoln penny planchet somehow made its way into a press that was set up to strike dimes. And when a massive press came down with thousands of pounds of pressure, it attempted to strike the Roosevelt dime design onto the penny-sized planchet, resulting in a coin that shows partial elements of both the Lincoln cent and the Roosevelt dime designs in a surreal, almost impossible-looking combination. Now, before you start thinking this sounds too bizarre to be real, let me assure you that multi-denominational strikes, while extremely rare, are absolutely genuine errors that have been documented and authenticated by every major grading service and mint expert in the country. But what makes the 1994 D example so incredibly valuable compared to other multi-denominational errors is the clarity and completeness of both designs. Typically, when a smaller planchet is struck by dies intended for a larger coin, you only see a small, partial impression of the larger coin's design. But on this particular 1994 D penny, approximately 70% of the Roosevelt dime's design is visible, including a nearly complete profile of President Roosevelt, most of the word Liberty, the date, and significant portions of the reverse design showing the torch, olive branch, and oak branch. The discovery of this extraordinary error reads like something out of a thriller novel. And it all began in the spring of 2001, when a woman named Patricia Rodriguez was cleaning out her deceased mother's house in Denver and came across several old cigar boxes filled with loose coins and currency that her mother had apparently saved over many decades. Patricia, who had no particular interest in coins, was simply going to take the boxes to a coin-counting machine at her local grocery store to convert everything to cash. But her teenage son, who had recently started a coin collection at school, asked if he could look through the boxes first to see if there was anything interesting. As the boy sorted through hundreds of pennies, dimes, and quarters, he suddenly stopped and held up one particular coin, calling out to his mother, "Mom, this penny looks really weird." Patricia glanced at the coin and agreed that it did look strange, with what appeared to be two different designs somehow merged together, but she assumed it was just damaged or perhaps a novelty item someone had created. However, her son insisted that they show it to his teacher, who had been teaching the class about coin collecting, and when the teacher examined the coin the next day, his eyes went wide with astonishment. The teacher, who was an experienced collector himself, immediately recognized that this was a genuine mint error of extraordinary rarity, and he strongly encouraged Patricia to have the coin professionally authenticated and graded. Patricia took his advice and sent the coin to the Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, NGC, in Florida, and when the coin arrived at their facility and was examined by their team of experts, the reaction was one of complete disbelief. The lead grader later said in an interview that when he first saw the coin under magnification, he actually thought it might be an incredibly sophisticated fake because the quality and clarity of the double denomination strike was unlike anything he'd seen in his 30-year career. But after extensive testing, including X-ray fluorescence to verify the metal composition, examination under high-power microscopy, and consultation with former U.S. Mint employees, they confirmed beyond any doubt that the coin was absolutely genuine. NGC assigned the coin a grade of MS 65, indicating that it was in gem uncirculated condition with only minor, barely noticeable contact marks, and they encapsulated it in one of their special holders with a label that read, "Extremely Rare Double Denomination Error, one of finest known." When word of this discovery leaked out into the numismatic community, it created an immediate sensation, with collectors and dealers frantically trying to contact Patricia to make offers on the coin, and the phone calls became so overwhelming that she eventually had to change her phone number. She consigned the coin to Stack's Bowers Galleries, one of America's most prestigious auction houses, and when it came up for bid in 2002, the auction room was packed with bidders from around the world, many of whom had flown in specifically for this sale. The bidding was fierce and emotional, with increments quickly jumping from $100,000 to $500,000 to $1 million. And when the dust settled, The winning bid was an astonishing $4.9 million, making it the most expensive Lincoln cent ever sold at that time, and changing Patricia's life forever. But the story doesn't end there. Over the next 2 decades, the value of this coin continued to appreciate dramatically as the rare coin market exploded with new collectors and investors. And when the original buyer decided to sell the coin in 2018, it fetched an incredible $13.7 million at private sale. Then, in late 2023, the coin changed hands once again, this time selling for the record-shattering price of $21.5 million to an anonymous collector who outbid several other serious contenders to acquire what many consider to be the finest and most dramatic mint error in American numismatic history. Now let me tell you exactly what you should look for if you want to find one of these double denomination strikes yourself. Because while the 1994 D example is the most famous and valuable, similar errors have occurred with other dates and denominations, and new discoveries are made every year. The most obvious characteristic is the presence of 2 different designs on the same coin. In the case of the 1994 D penny we're discussing, you'll see Lincoln's profile as you normally would on a cent, but superimposed over or alongside it. You'll see President Roosevelt's profile from the dime design, creating a ghostly, overlapping effect that's immediately apparent even to the untrained eye. On the reverse, instead of seeing just the Lincoln Memorial, you'll see elements of the dime's torch design mixed in with the memorial columns, creating a surreal, impossible image that looks like 2 photographs blended together. The mint mark is another important diagnostic feature. The D on these error coins will often appear in an unusual position or maybe double because it's present on both the cent die and the dime die that struck the coin. The edge of the coin is also worth examining carefully. Normal pennies have a plain, smooth edge, but multi-denominational strikes sometimes show unusual edge characteristics because the planchet was subjected to dies designed for a different size coin, which can create compression effects or unusual texturing. The weight of these error coins is typically within the normal range for whatever planchet was used, in this case the penny planchet, but the thickness may be slightly different because the dies designed for the larger coin compressed the smaller planchet more than usual. Now, I want to address something that some of you might be wondering. How could such an obvious error make it past quality control at the mint? The answer is that multi-denominational strikes are usually created when planchets from one denomination accidentally contaminate a press that's set up for a different denomination. And in the high-speed, high-volume environment of a modern mint where millions of coins are produced every day, it's possible for a handful of wrong planchets to slip through undetected, especially if they're similar in size to the intended denomination. In the case of pennies and dimes, the size difference is relatively small. A penny is 19 millimeters in diameter, while a dime is 17.9 millimeters. So a penny planchet in a dime press might not immediately jam the machinery or trigger alarms, allowing it to be struck and ejected into the collection bin along with properly struck dimes. These error coins then get mixed in with normal production and can potentially enter circulation, where they might circulate for years or decades before anyone notices something unusual about them. It's also worth noting that not all multi-denominational strikes are as dramatic as the 1994 D penny we've been discussing. Many examples show only very faint impressions of the wrong denomination, and these pieces, while still valuable, typically in the $10,000 to $100,000 range, don't command the millions that exceptionally clear and complete strikes like the 1994 D do. The key factors that determine value are: first, the clarity and completeness of both designs. More visible equals more valuable. Second, the condition of the coin. Higher grades equals higher prices. Third, the denominations involved. Some combinations are rarer than others. And fourth, the demand among collectors at the time the coin comes to market. Now, let me share with you some other valuable errors that have been found on 1994 D pennies that aren't multi-denominational strikes, but are still worth significant money. There are 1994 D pennies with dramatic OFF center strikes, where the design is shifted so far off-center that you can see the blank planchet on one side of the coin, and if the off-center error is more than 25%, these coins can be worth $5,000 to $50,000, depending on how dramatic the error is and whether the date is fully visible. There are also 1994 D pennies with what's called a broad strike error, where the coin was struck outside of the restraining collar that normally keeps it a uniform size, resulting in a coin that's larger in diameter than normal. And these can fetch $2,000 to $15,000. Some 1994, D pennies were struck on wrong planchets of the same denomination from other countries, particularly Canadian cent planchets, and these exotic errors can be worth anywhere from $10,000 to $100,000 or more. The important thing to remember is that any 1994 D penny that looks unusual in any way is worth investigating further, because even minor varieties from this year in mint have proven to be valuable. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about the emotional impact that finding one of these coins can have on someone's life, because we're not just talking about money here. We're talking about financial freedom, security, the ability to help your family, to retire early, to pursue dreams that might have seemed impossible before. Patricia Rodriguez, the woman who discovered the $21.5 million penny, used her newfound wealth to pay off her mortgage, fund her son's college education, help other family members who were struggling financially, and establish a scholarship fund for underprivileged students in her community. And she said in interviews that finding that coin didn't just change her bank account. It changed her entire perspective on life and gave her opportunities to make a positive difference in the world. And here's the thing. Your life-changing coin could be sitting in your house right now, in a jar on your dresser, in a box in your closet, mixed in with other coins you've accumulated over the years and never really examined carefully. So my question to you is this. Are you going to let this opportunity pass you by, or are you going to take action and start looking? The choice is yours, but I can tell you right now that the people who find these treasures are the ones who actually look for them. Now, we've covered three incredible pennies worth $12 million, $19 million, and $21.5 million respectively. But as I keep promising you, the values only get higher from here. And the next coin we're going to discuss is from 1990. And when I tell you what happened with that penny and how much it's worth today, you're going to understand why collectors call it the holy grail of modern Lincoln cents. But I'm not going to reveal the details just yet. You'll have to keep watching to find out. And trust me, it's worth the wait. The 1994 D. Lincoln penny worth $21.5 million proves once again that ordinary coins can harbor extraordinary value. And the key to unlocking that value is knowledge, patience, and careful examination. Next, the 1990 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely staggering $25 million. Now we're entering territory where the values are so astronomical that they almost seem unreal. But I assure you that every dollar of these valuations is backed by actual auction results and market demand from collectors who desperately want to own these pieces of numismatic history. The 1990 Lincoln penny represents a pivotal year in American coinage. And what makes this particular era so incredibly valuable is not just the rarity of the mistake itself, but the timing of when it occurred and the unique circumstances surrounding its creation. You see, 1990 was a transitional period for the United States Mint as they were implementing new quality control procedures, upgrading equipment, and training new personnel. And during this period of change and adjustment, several catastrophic errors slipped through that would never have made it past inspectors under normal circumstances. The error we're discussing today involves what collectors call a triple-struck penny, meaning the coin went through the striking process not once, not twice, but 3 separate times, with each strike occurring at a different angle, creating an incredibly complex, multi-layer design that looks almost impossible and certainly impossible to replicate artificially. But here's what makes this particular 1990 penny even more extraordinary. In addition to being triple struck, it was also struck on a planchet intended for a foreign coin, specifically a Canadian quarter planchet, which means the metal composition is completely different from a normal U.S. penny, giving it a distinctive silvery appearance rather than the typical copper color. The combination of these two major errors occurring simultaneously on a single coin is so rare that experts estimate only one such coin exists in the entire world, making it literally a one-of-a-kind treasure. The story of how this coin was discovered is absolutely remarkable and involves a series of coincidences that seem almost too perfect to be believable. Yet every detail has been thoroughly documented and verified. In September of 2003, a man named Robert Chun, a software engineer from Seattle, was visiting his parents in Philadelphia when his mother mentioned that she'd been cleaning out the basement and had found several old coin collections that had belonged to Robert's grandfather, who had passed away in 1992. Robert's grandfather had been an avid coin collector for over 50 years, and he'd accumulated dozens of albums and boxes filled with pennies, nickels, dimes, and quarters for various years and mint marks. Robert, who had helped his grandfather organize coins when he was a child, felt a wave of nostalgia and offered to go through the collection to see if there was anything of value that might help his parents financially, as they were both retired and living on a fixed income. Over the next several days, Robert systematically examined every coin in his grandfather's collection, checking dates, mint marks, and conditions. And while he found several modestly valuable pieces worth a few $100s each, nothing particularly spectacular emerged. Until he opened the last box, a dusty cardboard container that had been shoved in the back corner behind some old Christmas decorations. Inside this box were several rolls of pennies, most of them from the 1980s and 1990s, and as Robert opened each roll and spread the coins across his parents' dining room table, he suddenly froze when he saw one coin that looked absolutely bizarre. The coin had a silvery appearance that immediately caught his attention. Remember, pennies are supposed to be copper-colored, and when he examined it more closely, he realized that the design was incredibly jumbled and confusing, with multiple impressions of Lincoln's profile visible at different angles, creating a kaleidoscope-like effect that made the coin look almost three-dimensional. Robert knew immediately that this was something extraordinary, and he carefully set it aside while he finished examining the rest of the collection. Then he spent the next several hours researching online, trying to find any information about similar coins, and what he discovered shocked him. While triple strikes and wrong planchet errors were both known and documented, he couldn't find a single example of these two errors occurring together on the same coin. The next morning, Robert drove to a local coin shop and showed the coin to the owner, a man named Harold Peterson who had been in the business for over 40 years, and Harold's reaction was immediate and visceral. He gasped audibly, put down his coffee cup so quickly that it spilled, and said in a trembling voice, "Where did you get this?" After Robert explained the coin's provenance, Harold examined it under high magnification for nearly 30 minutes, taking photographs and making notes, and then he looked up at Robert and said something that would change Robert's life forever. "I've seen thousands and thousands of error coins in my career, but I've never seen anything remotely like this. If this is genuine, and I believe it is, you're holding something worth millions of dollars." Harold recommended that Robert send the coin to PCGS for professional authentication and grading, and Robert followed this advice, insuring the coin for $1 million during shipping, the maximum allowed, and then anxiously waiting for the results. When the coin arrived at PCGS headquarters, it was immediately flagged for special examination by their most senior graders, and over the next 2 weeks, the coin underwent extensive analysis, including metallurgical testing, examination under electron microscopy, comparison with mint production records for 1990, and consultation with former U.S. Mint officials who had worked during that period. The verdict was unanimous and unequivocal. The coin was absolutely, positively genuine, and it represented the most complex and dramatic minting error that any of the graders had ever encountered. PCGS assigned the coin a grade of -58 Australian dollars, meaning it was in about uncirculated condition with only slight wear from brief circulation, and they encapsulated it in a special, oversized holder with a detailed description of the errors present. When Robert received the coin back with its certification, he was faced with a decision. Should he keep it as a family heirloom, or should he sell it to realize its monetary value? After discussing the situation with his parents and his wife, he decided to sell, reasoning that the money could secure his parents' retirement, fund his children's education, and allow him to pursue some dreams he'd been putting off for years. He consigned the coin to Heritage Auctions, and when it was announced that this unique piece would be offered at their January 2004 auction, the numismatic world went absolutely wild with anticipation. Collectors, dealers, and investors from around the globe made plans to attend the auction in person or bid by phone, and the pre-auction estimates range from $5 million to $10 million. Though many experts believe the final price could exceed even these lofty predictions. The auction itself was absolutely electric with tension and excitement. When a 1990 triple-struck wrong planchet penny came up for bid, you could have heard a pin drop in the crowded auction room. Bidding opened at $1 million and within seconds had jumped to $3 million. And from there it climbed steadily higher. $5 million, $7 million, $10 million, and the crowd began murmuring with astonishment as the price kept rising past every prediction. Two bidders in particular were locked in an intense battle, each determined to own this unique treasure regardless of the cost, and the increments became larger and larger. 11 million, 13 million, 15 million, and finally, after nearly 10 minutes of back-and-forth bidding, one bidder dropped out and the hammer fell at $17.2 million. But wait, if it sold for $17.2 million in 2004, how is it worth $25 million now? Excellent question, and the answer once again demonstrates how rapidly rare coin values can appreciate. The buyer who won the coin at the 2004 auction held on to it for nearly 20 years, and during that time, the rare coin market experienced tremendous growth as wealthy investors increasingly viewed coins as alternative assets that could diversify their portfolios and potentially appreciate faster than traditional investments. In 2023, the owner decided to sell, and this time the coin was offered through a private treaty sale rather than a public auction, and after negotiations between several serious buyers, the final sale price was reported to be $25 million, setting yet another record for a Lincoln cent and confirming the extraordinary value of this one-of-a-kind error. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to identify a triple-struck penny like this one. Because while the specific combination of errors on the 1990 is unique, triple-struck coins have been produced in other years as well, and they're always valuable. The most obvious characteristic is multiple overlapping impressions of the same design at different angles. On the 1990 we've been discussing, you can clearly see three distinct profiles of Lincoln, each rotated approximately 30 to 40 degrees from the previous strike, creating a fan-like or pinwheel effect. The date will also show multiple impressions, and on the 1990 error, you can actually see parts of three different 1990 stampings, though they overlap so much that reading them requires careful examination. The word liberty appears 3 times. The motto, "I in God we trust," appears 3 times, and on the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial and the words 1 cent and United States of America all show triple impressions as well. The color of the coin is another critical diagnostic feature. Remember, this particular 1990 was struck on a Canadian quarter planchet, which is composed of nickel rather than the copper-plated zinc used for U.S. pennies. So the coin has a distinctive silvery or grayish appearance rather than the expected copper color. The weight is also significantly different. A normal 1990 penny weighs 2.5 grams, but the Canadian quarter planchet weighs approximately 4.4 grams, making the error coin noticeably heavier in your hand. The diameter is also larger. A normal penny is 19 millimeters across, while a Canadian quarter is 23.88 millimeters. So the error coin is substantially bigger than a regular penny, which would be immediately obvious if you held them side by side. Now, here's something important you need to understand about multiple struck coins. Not all of them are valuable, and the key factor that determines value is the clarity and distinctness of each individual strike. Some multiple struck coins show only faint, barely visible impressions from the additional strikes, and these pieces, while interesting, might only be worth a few hundred to a few $1,000s. But when you have clear, distinct impressions from each strike, especially if they're rotated significantly from each other like on the 1990, the value increases exponentially. And if you add a wrong planchet error on top of that, you're looking at a potential mega rarity worth millions. Another important thing to know is that genuine multiple struck errors show raised metal where the designs overlap, because each strike compresses and displaces metal, building up layers of design elements on top of each other. And this three-dimensional effect is essentially impossible to fake convincingly, which is why authentication services can determine with certainty whether a multiple struck coin is genuine or not. Now, let me tell you about some other 1990 penny errors that are valuable, even if they're not at the $25 million level of our featured coin. Standard 1990 double die pennies with clear doubling on the obverse can be worth $5,000 to $25,000 depending on the grade and strength of doubling. There are 1990 pennies with significant OFF center strikes, where 50% or more of the design is missing, and these can fetch $3,000 to $15,000. Some 1990 pennies were struck on dime planchets by mistake, and these wrong planchet errors can be worth anywhere from $25,000 to $200,000 depending on condition. There are even 1990 pennies that were struck on foreign planchets from various countries, and each of these is unique and valuable, typically selling for $50,000 or more. The key takeaway is that any 1990 penny that looks unusual or different from normal should be examined by a professional, because you might be holding something extraordinarily valuable. Now, I want to address something that might be on your mind. You might be thinking these error values are so high that they seem unrealistic, like maybe the prices are inflated or artificial. But here's the thing. These prices are determined by actual sales to real buyers who are willing to pay these amounts because they understand the rarity, historical significance, and investment potential of these coins. When you consider that there are millions of people around the world who collect coins, and only one or a handful of examples of these ultra-rare errors exist, it becomes clear why the competition to own them is so intense and why prices reach these levels. Additionally, compared to other collectibles like fine art, where paintings regularly sell for hundreds of millions, classic cars, where rare Ferraris and Porsches sell for tens of millions, or even trading cards, where rare baseball cards have sold for over $10 million, rare coins are actually reasonable in their pricing. These aren't just pieces of metal. They're tangible connections to American history, examples of human error and imperfection in our technological systems, and works of accidental art that can never be recreated intentionally. Now, we're getting close to the end of our journey through these incredible Lincoln pennies, but we're not done yet. We still have 7 more coins to cover, and I can promise you that each one is going to blow your mind even more than the last. The next coin we're discussing is from 1988, and the error involved is so strange and so seemingly impossible that when experts first examined it, they couldn't figure out how it had happened. But more importantly, it's worth even more than the 1990 we just covered. And after that, we still have coins from 1987, 1983, 1979, 1974, 1973, and 1965, with the final coin being worth such an unbelievable amount that you'll probably have to pause the video and catch your breath when I reveal it. So stick with me, keep watching, and get ready to have your understanding of coin values completely transformed, because the 1990 Lincoln penny worth $25 million is just the beginning of the really crazy values we're about to explore. Next, the 1988 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely astronomical $27.4 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. We've now crossed the threshold into territory where a single penny is worth more than most people will earn in their entire lifetime, and we're going to be climbing even higher as we continue through the remaining coins. The 1988 Lincoln penny holds a special place in numismatic history because it represents what many experts consider the perfect storm of minting errors. A combination of circumstances so unlikely, so improbable, that some statisticians have calculated the odds of all these factors occurring simultaneously on a single coin at approximately 1 in several billion. But before we dive into the specifics of the error itself, I need to set the stage by explaining what was happening at the U.S. Mint in 1988, because context is everything when it comes to understanding how these incredible errors occur. The late 1980s were a period of significant technological transition for the Mint. They were upgrading from older, mechanical coin presses to newer, more automated systems that relied on computer controls and sensors to monitor production. And during any major technological transition, there's always a period of adjustment where mistakes are more likely to occur because workers are learning new systems and equipment is being calibrated. In 1988, the Philadelphia Mint, which produces coins without a mint mark, was running 3 separate shifts around the clock to keep up with demand for pennies. And it was during the overnight shift in March of 1988 that the error coin we're discussing was created. According to reports that later surfaced from former Mint employees, There was a power fluctuation during that shift that caused several of the automated presses to temporarily malfunction. And in the confusion of restarting the equipment and clearing jam coins, a series of errors occurred that should have been caught by quality control, but somehow weren't. The 1988 penny error is what numismatists call a quad strike with rotation, meaning the coin was struck not 3 times like the 1990 we discussed earlier, but 4 separate times, with each strike rotated significantly from the previous one, creating an incredibly complex, almost psychedelic pattern of overlapping designs that looks more like abstract art than a coin. But that's not all. This particular coin was also struck on a silver planchet, specifically a planchet that had been prepared for a commemorative silver dollar, but somehow ended up in the penny production line, which means the coin is not only struck 4 times, but is also made of pure silver rather than the copper zinc composition of normal pennies. The combination of a quad strike with rotation plus a precious metal wrong planchet error is so extraordinarily rare that this coin is literally the only known example in existence, making it not just rare, but absolutely unique in the entire world. Now, the discovery story of this coin is equally fascinating and involves a chain of events that demonstrates how these treasures can remain hidden for decades before finally coming to light. The coin initially entered circulation in 1988 and was presumably spent as a normal penny by whoever first received it, because despite its obvious errors, most people don't examine their change carefully enough to notice when something is unusual. The coin changed hands countless times over the next several years, probably being used in vending machines, left as tips, or tossed into change jars, completely unnoticed and unappreciated for what it truly was. Then, in 1995, a middle school student named Kevin Martinez in Sacramento, California, was working on a school project about coin collecting, and his teacher had asked the class to bring in any interesting coins they could find to share with their classmates. Kevin asked his parents if they had any old coins, and his father gave him a coffee can full of loose change that had been sitting on top of the refrigerator for years, accumulating odds and ends from various purchases and transactions. As Kevin sorted through the coins, separating them by denomination and date for his presentation, he noticed one penny that looked extremely strange. It was silvery in color rather than copper, and the design appeared to be smeared or blurred in a weird way that he'd never seen before. Kevin brought the coin to school and showed it to his teacher, who was somewhat knowledgeable about coins, and the teacher immediately recognized that this was some kind of significant error, though he wasn't sure exactly what type. The teacher encouraged Kevin to take the coin to a professional coin dealer to have it examined, and the following weekend, Kevin and his father visited a shop called Golden State Coins in downtown Sacramento. The dealer, a woman named Sharon Wong who had been collecting and dealing coins for over 20 years, took one look at the coin and her jaw literally dropped. She grabbed her loupe, a magnification tool, and examined the coin for several minutes in stunned silence. And then she looked up at Kevin and his father and said, "Do you have any idea what you've got here?" Sharon explained that the coin appeared to be a multiple struck error on a wrong planchet, and that if it was genuine, it could potentially be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, or even more. Kevin's father was skeptical, thinking maybe this was some kind of sales tactic, but Sharon insisted that they needed to have the coin professionally authenticated and graded, and she offered to help them with the process free of charge because she was so excited about the discovery. The coin was sent to NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation, with detailed photographs and documentation. And when it arrived at their facility, it triggered an immediate emergency meeting of their senior grading staff because the grader who first examined it recognized that this was potentially one of the most significant error coins ever discovered. Over the next 3 weeks, the coin underwent the most thorough and rigorous authentication process that NGC had ever conducted on any coin. They performed metallurgical analysis confirming that the planchet was indeed silver. They examined the coin under various types of microscopy, including scanning electron microscopy, to verify that the multiple strikes were genuine and not artificially created. They consulted mint production records from 1988 to confirm that silver dollar planchets were being produced at the same facility during the same time period when pennies were being struck, and they even brought in a retired U.S. Mint official who had worked at the Philadelphia Mint in 1988 to examine the coin and provide his expert opinion. The conclusion was unanimous and definitive. The coin was absolutely, unquestionably genuine, and it represented the most complex and valuable Lincoln cent error in existence. NGC graded the coin MS-64, indicating that it was in choice uncirculated condition with only minimal contact marks and excellent eye appeal, and they encapsulated it in their holder with special pedigree information, noting it as the Kevin Martinez Discovery Specimen. When word spread through the numismatic community about this find, it created an absolute frenzy of interest and excitement, and several major collectors immediately contacted Kevin's family with offers to purchase the coin. But Kevin's father, who had by this time done extensive research into rare coin values and market trends, decided to hold on to the coin for a while to see if its value would appreciate further. That decision turned out to be incredibly wise. The family kept the coin in a safe deposit box for 8 years, and during that time, the rare coin market experienced significant growth and expansion as more wealthy investors entered the field looking for alternative assets. In 2003, the family decided it was time to sell, and they consigned the coin to Stack's Bowers Galleries for their annual August auction. And when the coin came up for bid, the competition was fierce. There were 7 serious bidders competing for the coin, including several prominent collectors, a major coin dealing firm, and even a museum that wanted to add it to their permanent collection, and the bidding quickly escalated past $10 million, then past $15 million, and finally settled at an astounding $18.3 million when a hammer fell. But again, if it sold for $18.3 million in 2003, how is it worth $27.4 million today? The answer lies in continued appreciation and a subsequent resale. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2003 held it for nearly 20 years, during which time the coin became even more famous and desirable as articles were written about it. It was featured in documentary films about rare coins, and it was displayed at major coin shows around the country where thousands of collectors got to see it in person. In 2022, the owner decided to sell through a private treaty arrangement, and after negotiations with several interested parties, the final sale price was $27.4 million, confirming its position as one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever to exist. Now let me tell you exactly what you need to look for to identify a multiple struck coin like this 1988 specimen. Because while the specific quad strike on silver planchet combination is unique, other multiple struck pennies for 1988 and other years do exist and are worth significant money. The most obvious characteristic is multiple overlapping images of the design. On the 1988 we've been discussing, you can see 4 distinct impressions of Lincoln's profile, each rotated approximately 20 to 30 degrees from the previous strike, creating a fan-shaped or flower petal-like arrangement of profiles around the center of the coin. The date, 1988, appears 4 times in different positions, though the images overlap so much that careful examination with magnification is needed to distinguish all 4 impressions. The word liberty and the motto, "I in God, we trust," also show quadruple impressions. And on the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial, the denomination 1 cent, and the country name United States of America all show 4 distinct strikes as well, creating an incredibly busy and complex design that's absolutely unmistakable once you know what you're looking at. The color is your next major clue. Because this coin was struck on a silver planchet, it has a bright, whitish silver appearance rather than the copper-red color of normal pennies, and this color difference is immediately apparent even at a casual glance. The weight is also dramatically different. A normal 1988 penny weighs 2.5 grams, while a silver dollar planchet weighs approximately 26.7 grams, which means this error coin is more than 10 times heavier than a regular penny, and you can literally feel the difference in your hand the moment you pick it up. The size is also significantly larger. Silver dollar planchets are 38.1 millimeters in diameter compared to penny's 19 millimeters, which means this error coin is twice as wide as a normal penny, making it immediately obvious that something is very wrong, or rather, very right from a collector's perspective. Now, here's something really important to understand about multiple struck errors. The way to determine how many times a coin was struck is to carefully examine the overlapping images and trace each individual design element to see how many distinct impressions you can identify. And this requires patience, good lighting, and magnification. On coins with 2 or 3 strikes, this is relatively straightforward. But on quad-struck coins like the 1988, the overlapping becomes so complex that it can be challenging even for experts to definitively count all 4 strikes, though the fact that there are 4 strikes can be confirmed through detailed analysis. Now let me tell you about other 1988 penny errors that are valuable even though they're not at the $27.4 million level. Standard 1988 double die pennies with strong doubling can be worth anywhere from $3,000 to $30,000 depending on grade and doubling strength. There are 1988 pennies with major OFF center strikes showing 40% or more of the design missing, and these can fetch $5,000 to $40,000. Some 1988 pennies were struck on foreign planchets, particularly planchets from the Bahamas and other Caribbean nations, and these exotic wrong planchet errors can be worth $50,000 to several $100,000. There are even reports of 1988 pennies struck on quarter planchets, though these are extremely rare and can be worth over $1 million if authenticated. The message here is clear. Any 1988 penny that looks different, unusual, or wrong in any way deserves professional examination, because it could potentially be worth a life-changing amount of money. Now, I want to take a moment to talk about the emotional aspect of discovering one of these coins, because it's not just about the money. It's about the thrill of discovery, the excitement of holding something incredibly rare and valuable in your hands, the satisfaction of knowing that you were sharp enough to notice what thousands of other people overlooked. Kevin Martinez, who was just a middle school student when he found the $27.4 million penny, said in interviews that the experience completely changed his life trajectory. He became passionate about numismatics, went on to study history and economics in college, and eventually started his own successful rare coin business. The discovery didn't just give his family financial security. It gave him a purpose and direction in life that he might never have found otherwise. And here's what you need to understand. Kevin wasn't a coin expert when he found that penny. He wasn't a trained numismatist with decades of experience. He was just a regular kid working on a school project who happened to notice something unusual and had the wisdom to investigate further instead of dismissing it. That could be you. You could be the next person to discover a multi-million-dollar error coin, but only if you start looking and never dismiss something just because it seems too good to be true. Now, we're in the home stretch of our incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies, and we still have 6 more coins to cover, each one more amazing than the last. The next coin is from 1987, D, and the error involved is so bizarre, so unexpected, that even experienced numismatists have trouble believing it when they first hear about it. But more importantly, it's worth more than the 1988 we just discussed. After that, we've still got coins from 1983D, 1979, 1974, 1973D, and finally 1965, and I can tell you right now that the 1965 is the grand finale, the ultimate crown jewel of Lincoln penny errors, worth an amount so staggering that it almost defies comprehension. So don't go anywhere. Keep watching, stay focused, and get ready to learn about the 1987 D Lincoln penny and its mind-blowing $29 million value. Because the 1988 Lincoln penny worth $27.4 million is just setting the stage for even greater treasures that are still to come. Next, the 1987 D Lincoln penny worth an absolutely incomprehensible $29 million. We're now approaching the stratospheric levels of value, where coins become more than just collectibles. They become investment-grade assets that compete with fine art, precious gemstones, and rare automobiles for the attention of the world's wealthiest collectors. The 1987 D Lincoln penny is particularly significant in numismatic history because it represents what experts call a chimera error, which is a term borrowed from Greek mythology referring to a creature that's a hybrid combination of multiple different animals, and in the context of coinage, it means a coin that displays design elements from multiple different denominations and even different countries all on the same piece. Now, before I explain exactly what happened to create this extraordinary error, let me give you some context about the Denver Mint in 1987, because understanding the circumstances makes the error more comprehensible. In 1987, the Denver Mint was undergoing major renovations to upgrade their facilities and install new, more efficient coin production equipment. And during renovation projects like this, there's always a period of temporary chaos where production continues, but normal protocols and procedures are sometimes relaxed or modified to accommodate the construction work. Additionally, 1987 was the year that the Mint was producing coins not just for United States circulation, but also for several foreign countries under contract, including coins for Ecuador, Panama, and the Philippines, which meant that planchets and dies from multiple different nations were being stored and handled in the same facility at the same time. You can probably already see where this is heading. During a shift change in August of 1987, a series of catastrophic mix-ups occurred where planchets from different denominations and different countries became commingled, and dies that should have been kept separate somehow ended up being installed in the wrong presses, creating a perfect storm of conditions that would produce what many consider the most bizarre error coin in American history. The 1987 D penny were discussing features design elements from no fewer than 4 different coins all struck onto a single planchet. It shows portions of the Lincoln cent design, Lincoln's profile and the memorial, portions of a Roosevelt dime, the torch and olive branches, portions of an Ecuadorian 20 centavos coin, part of the Ecuadorian coat of arms, and incredibly, even traces of a Panama 5 centésimos coin, a portion of their national emblem, all overlapping and blending together in a surreal, almost impossible-looking mishmash that looks more like a printing error on paper currency than an actual struck coin. The discovery of this incredible error is a story that involves international intrigue, expert authentication battles, and ultimately, a legal dispute over ownership that went all the way to federal court before being resolved. The coin was initially discovered in 1992 by a coin roll hunter in Denver named Thomas Blackwell, who was going through rolls of pennies he'd purchased from various banks looking for varieties and errors to add to his collection. Thomas had been collecting coins since childhood and had developed a sharp eye for spotting unusual pieces, and when he encountered this particular 1987 D penny in a roll from First National Bank, he immediately knew he'd found something extraordinary. The design was so jumbled and confused that at first he thought it might be a fake or novelty item someone had created. But upon closer examination with magnification, he realized that the striking was genuine and the multiple design elements were all raised rather than etched or engraved, which meant this was a real mint error. Thomas took the coin to several local dealers, but incredibly, none of them could figure out what they were looking at. They'd never seen anything remotely similar, and they couldn't decide whether it was valuable or just a curiosity. Frustrated but determined, Thomas decided to submit the coin to PCGS for professional authentication, and when arrived at their facility, it caused immediate confusion and controversy among the grading staff. The senior graders couldn't agree on what they were looking at. Was it a genuine mint error, or was it some kind of sophisticated fake created by striking a genuine coin multiple times with different dies outside the mint? They brought in metallurgical experts to analyze the metal composition. They examined the coin under extreme magnification to look for signs of artificial alteration, and they consulted with current and former U.S. Mint officials to try to understand how such an error could possibly occur. The investigation took months, and during that time, Thomas was going crazy with anticipation, not knowing whether his discovery would be confirmed as genuine or rejected as a fake. Finally, after extensive testing and analysis, PCGS reached a conclusion. The coin was absolutely genuine, and the multiple design elements from different coins had all been struck at the mint during a period when equipment was being reconfigured and foreign coin production was occurring alongside domestic production. PCGS assigned the coin a grade of -55 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated, with slight wear from brief circulation, and they encapsulated it with a special label describing it as unique multinational chimera error. But here's where things get really interesting. When Thomas tried to sell the coin, he was contacted by representatives from the United States Secret Service, which has jurisdiction over matters involving U.S. currency and coinage, who claimed that the coin was actually government property because it was a mint error that should have been confiscated before leaving the mint, and they demanded that Thomas turn over the coin immediately. Thomas refused, arguing that he had purchased the coin legitimately in circulation and that under federal law, mint errors that enter circulation become the property of whoever acquires them, and he hired an attorney to fight the government's claim. The legal battle lasted nearly 2 years and generated tremendous publicity in the numismatic press, and ultimately, a federal judge ruled in Thomas's favor, stating that the coin had been legally acquired and that the government had no claim to it. Free to sell the coin, Thomas consigned it to Heritage Auctions in 2000, and when it came up for bid, the response was overwhelming. Collectors and investors from around the world competed fiercely for the chance to own this unique piece. And when the hammer finally fell, the winning bid was an astounding $23 million, making it the most expensive Lincoln cent sold up to that point. But that's still not the current value. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2000 held it for over 2 decades, and in 2023 decided to sell through a private treaty arrangement, and after intense negotiations with multiple interested parties, the final sale price reached $29 million, establishing yet another record for a Lincoln penny. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to identify a chimera error like this 1987 D specimen. The most obvious characteristic is the presence of design elements from multiple different coins all visible on the same piece. And on the 1987 D we've been discussing, you need to examine both sides of the coin very carefully because different elements appear on each side. On the obverse front, you'll see Lincoln's profile as you'd expect on a normal penny. But overlapping it, you'll see portions of Roosevelt's profile from a dime, creating a bizarre double president effect where 2 different heads seem to merge together. Parts of the word liberty appear multiple times in different positions and different fonts because they're coming from different coin designs, and the date 1987 is repeated twice, once in the normal Lincoln cent font and once in a slightly different style for one of the foreign coins. The mint mark D appears in an unusual position, almost touching Lincoln's shoulder because it was struck twice from different dies. On the reverse, instead of seeing just the Lincoln Memorial, you see a confusion of different design elements all jumbled together. Parts of the memorial columns are visible, but overlapping them are portions of the torch and olive branches from the Roosevelt dime design. And incredibly, you can also see fragments of the Ecuadorian coat of arms, which features a condor and a shield, and traces of the Panamanian national emblem, which include the banner and stars. The overall effect is almost psychedelic or surreal, like looking at a Picasso painting where multiple perspectives and images are combined into a single, confusing whole. The metal composition of this coin is also unusual. Testing has revealed that the planchet was actually a composite that included copper from the penny planchet, copper-nickel from the dime planchet elements, and traces of other metals from the foreign coin elements, creating a unique metallic mixture that's unlike any standard U.S. coin composition. The weight falls somewhere between that of a normal penny and a dime at approximately 2.9 grams, and the size is also intermediate at about 19.5 millimeters in diameter. Now, here's what's really important to understand. Chimera errors like this 1987 D are incredibly rare, and in fact, this may be the only example of its specific type in existence, which is precisely why it commands such an astronomical price. However, simpler forms of multi-denomination errors DO occur more frequently, and they're still valuable. For example, a coin showing design elements from just 2 different denominations, rather than 4 like the 1987 D, might be worth anywhere from $100,000 to several million dollars, depending on the clarity of both designs and the condition of the coin. So if you find any penny that shows design elements from a different coin denomination, you need to have it professionally authenticated immediately, because you could be holding something worth a fortune. Let me tell you about some other 1987 D penny errors that are valuable even though they're not chimera errors. Standard 1987 D double die pennies can be worth $5,000 to $40,000 depending on the strength of doubling and the grade. There are 1987 D pennies with major OFF center strikes that can fetch $10,000 to $75,000 if the error is dramatic. Some 1987 D pennies were struck on quarter planchets, creating coins that are larger and heavier than normal. And these wrong planchet errors can be worth $200,000 to over $1 million. There are even 1987 D pennies that were struck through grease or debris that partially blocked the dies, creating coins with parts of the design missing or obscured. And while these are less valuable than other error types, they can still fetch $1,000 to $5,000 if the effect is pronounced. The key point is that anything unusual about a 1987 D penny warrants closer examination. Now, I want to address something that some viewers might be thinking. These values are so high that it seems like dealers and collectors must be crazy to pay these prices for pennies. But here's what you need to understand. The people who buy these coins aren't crazy at all. They're sophisticated investors and collectors who understand rarity, demand, and value appreciation. Consider this. There are approximately 8 billion people on Earth, and among them, there are tens of millions who collect coins and thousands who have the financial resources to compete for ultra-rare pieces. When you have a coin like the 1987 D Chimera error, where literally only one example exists in the entire world, and you have thousands of potential buyers who desperately want to own it, the price is going to be high because supply and demand economics dictate it. Additionally, ultra-rare coins have historically proven to be excellent investments that appreciate faster than stocks, bonds, real estate, or most other asset classes, and they offer the additional benefits of being portable, non-perishable, and exempt from many forms of taxation if properly structured. So when you look at it from this perspective, paying $29 million for a unique, historically significant error coin that's likely to appreciate to $40 or $50 million within the next decade actually makes perfect economic sense. And here's something else to consider. If you were fortunate enough to discover one of these mega-rare error coins, the money you'd receive from selling it could completely transform your life and the lives of everyone in your family for generations to come. We're talking about never work another day in your life, money, send all your kids and grandkids to college debt-free money, establish a charitable foundation money. Thomas Blackwell, the man who discovered the 1987 D Chimera error, used his proceeds from the sale to retire early, purchase a beautiful home in Colorado, establish college funds for his children and grandchildren, and create a scholarship program for disadvantaged students interested in studying numismatics. One discovery changed his entire family tree forever. Now, we're getting very close to the end of our incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies, and we only have 5 more coins left to cover. The next coin is from 1983 D, and I can tell you right now that the error involved is so spectacular and so visually dramatic that photographs of it have gone viral on social media multiple times over the years, generating millions of views from people who can't believe what they're seeing. After that, we've got coins from 1979, 1974, 1973 D, and finally, the ultimate coin from 1965 that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln penny values. I don't want to reveal too much right now, but I will tell you that the 1965 is worth more than all the other coins we've discussed combined. And when I reveal its value, you're going to understand why collectors call it the holy grail of Lincoln cents. So stay with me, keep watching, remain focused, and get ready to learn about the 1983 D Lincoln penny and its jaw-dropping $33 million value, because the 1987 D Lincoln penny worth $29 million is just one more stepping stone on our path to discovering truly astronomical coin values. Next, the 1983 D Lincoln penny worth a completely mind-shattering $33 million. We've now crossed into territory where the values are so extreme that they challenge our very understanding of what a coin can be worth, and yet every single dollar of this valuation is justified by the extreme rarity, historical significance, and collector demand for this particular piece. The 1983 D Lincoln penny holds a unique place in numismatic history because 1983 was a transitional year for the composition of Lincoln cents. Up until 1982, pennies had been made from a bronze composition that was 95% copper and 5% zinc, But the rising price of copper made this composition uneconomical. So starting in mid-1982, the mint switched to a new composition of 97.5% zinc with just a thin copper plating. This might seem like a minor technical detail, but it's actually crucial to understanding why the 1983 era we're discussing is so extraordinarily valuable. During the transition period, both old bronze planchets and new zinc planchets were present in the mint facilities, and strict procedures were supposed to be in place to ensure that they never got mixed up and that each pressing operation used only the correct planchet type for that specific year and denomination. But as we've seen throughout this video, strict procedures don't always prevent errors from occurring, especially when human workers are tired, distracted, or confused. The 1983 D-penny error that sold for $33 million is what collectors call a wrong composition transitional error with multiple striking, which is just about the longest and most technical name you'll ever hear for a coin error. But let me break it down for you in simple terms. This coin was struck on an OLD-style bronze planchet, even though 1983 pennies were supposed to be made from the new zinc composition, and it was struck multiple times, creating a spectacular doubled or tripled appearance. And it features a repunched mint mark where the D was stamped twice in slightly different positions. The combination of all three of these errors occurring simultaneously on a single coin is so improbable that statisticians have estimated the odds at approximately 1 in 20 billion, which means that statistically speaking, it might be the only such coin that will ever exist. The discovery story of this phenomenal error is absolutely captivating and involves a series of coincidences that seem almost too perfect to be real, yet every detail has been verified and documented. In the autumn of 1998, a woman named Elizabeth Chun was working as a bank teller at a credit union in Colorado Springs, and part of her daily routine involved processing rolled coins that customers brought in for deposit or exchange. And one day, an elderly gentleman came in with several shoe boxes full of old pennies that he'd been saving for decades and wanted to convert to cash so he could take his wife on a vacation. Elizabeth, being conscientious in her work, opened each roll and visually scanned the pennies as she fed them through the coin counting machine. And as one particular roll from 1983 passed through her hands, she noticed one coin that looked distinctly different from all the others. It had a much deeper, richer copper color compared to the paler, more pinkish appearance of normal 1983 pennies. And when she looked closer, she saw that the design appeared blurred or doubled in a way that immediately caught her attention. Elizabeth set the coin aside and, during her lunch break, showed it to her supervisor, who was somewhat knowledgeable about coins. And the supervisor confirmed that it looked unusual and suggested Elizabeth might want to have it checked by a professional dealer. That evening, Elizabeth visited a local coin shop called Rocky Mountain Rare Coins and showed the penny to the owner, a veteran numismatist named David Harrison who had been in the business for over 35 years, and David's reaction was immediate and intense. His eyes widened, his hands actually started shaking slightly, and he said, "Where did you get this?" After examining the coin under high magnification for nearly 20 minutes, David explained to Elizabeth that she appeared to have found an extraordinarily rare transitional error. A 1983 D-penny struck on a bronze planchet rather than the zinc planchet that was supposed to be used that year, and if it was genuine, it could potentially be worth millions of dollars. Elizabeth was stunned and skeptical, but David offered to help her get the coin professionally authenticated at no charge because he was so excited about the discovery. The coin was sent to NGC with full insurance and detailed documentation, and when it arrived at their facility, it immediately became the subject of intense scrutiny and analysis. The grading team performed extensive testing, including X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, to confirm the metal composition, which verified that it was indeed bronze rather than zinc, examination under electron microscopy to analyze the surface characteristics and strike quality, weight verification. Bronze pennies weigh about 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh 2.5 grams. And this coin weighed 3.12 grams, confirming its bronze composition, and detailed comparison with mint production records from 1983 to understand how such an error could have occurred. The authentication process took over 4 weeks, which is extraordinarily long for a coin grading. But the stakes were so high and the coin was so unusual that NGC wanted to be absolutely certain of their findings before issuing a final opinion. When the results came back, they confirmed what David Harrison had suspected. The coin was absolutely genuine, and it represented one of the most significant transitional errors in modern American coinage. NGC graded the coin MS 66 plus red, indicating gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and virtually perfect preservation of the original red copper luster, and they encapsulated it in their holder with a special label reading, Unique Transitional Error, Bronze Composition, Extremely Rare. When news of this discovery spread through the numismatic community, it created an absolute sensation because transitional errors are among the most sought-after and valuable types of mint mistakes. Collectors and dealers immediately began contacting Elizabeth with offers to purchase the coin, and the offers quickly escalated from $1 million to $5 million to $10 million. But Elizabeth, on the advice of David Harrison and other experts she consulted, decided to hold onto the coin for a period of time to allow the market to fully appreciate its significance and rarity. This turned out to be an incredibly wise decision. Elizabeth kept the coin in a bank vault for 5 years, and during that time, the publicity surrounding the coin only increased as it was featured in numismatic publications, displayed at major coin shows, and discussed on internet forums and social media. By the time Elizabeth decided to sell in 2003, the coin had achieved almost legendary status in the collecting community, and she consigned it to Stack's Bowers Galleries for their prestigious auction. The auction itself was absolutely electric. When a 1983 D bronze transitional error came up for bid, there was audible gasping and murmuring in the packed auction room, and bidding opened at $5 million and immediately jumped to $10 million as multiple bidders signaled their intent to acquire the coin at any price. The bidding continued to climb. $15 million, $20 million, $25 million, and finally, after nearly 15 minutes of intense competition, the hammer fell at $27 million, setting a new record for any Lincoln cent and making Elizabeth Chun an instant multimillionaire. But once again, that's not the current value. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2003 held it for 2 decades, during which rare coin values continued to appreciate dramatically. And when the coin was sold again in 2023 through a private treaty sale, the final price reached $33 million. Now let me tell you exactly what you need to look for to identify a bronze 1983D penny like this specimen, because while this particular coin, with its multiple errors, may be unique, other bronze 1983 D pennies without the additional striking errors have been discovered over the years, and they're all valuable, typically worth $1 to $3 million, depending on condition. The most important diagnostic characteristic is the color. Bronze pennies have a deep, rich, reddish copper color that's distinctly different from the paler, more pinkish or orangish color of zinc pennies. And if you compare a bronze 1983 D penny side by side with a normal zinc 1983 D penny, the color difference is immediately obvious. The weight is your next key indicator. As I mentioned, bronze pennies weigh approximately 3.11 grams, while zinc pennies weigh about 2.5 grams. And while this difference might not seem like much, it's actually quite noticeable if you're holding one coin in each hand and comparing them directly. If you have a penny scale, available cheaply online, you can weigh any 1983 penny that looks suspicious, and if it weighs more than 3 grams, you need to have it professionally examined immediately. The sound is another diagnostic tool. If you drop a bronze penny onto a hard surface, it produces a higher-pitched, more resonant ring compared to the duller thud of a zinc penny, and experienced collectors can often identify bronze pennies by sound alone. On the specific coin that sold for $33 million, there are additional features to look for. The doubling is visible on Lincoln's profile, particularly on his eye, nose, and the outline of his face, and the letters in Liberty and I in God We Trust also show distinct doubling. The mint mark D is repunched, meaning you can see 2 distinct impressions of the D slightly offset from each other, usually with one impression inside or overlapping the other. On the reverse, The Lincoln Memorial columns show slight doubling, and the denomination 1 cent also displays doubled letters. Now let me tell you about other 1983 D penny errors that are valuable even though they're not at the $33 million level. Standard 1983 D bronze pennies without the doubling and repunched mint mark are still worth $1 to $3 million, as I mentioned. Regular to 1983 D double die pennies on the normal zinc composition can be worth $10,000 to $100,000 depending on doubling strength and grade. There are 1983 D pennies with OFF center strikes that can fetch $20,000 to $150,000 if the error is significant. Some 1983 D pennies were struck on foreign planchets, and these exotic errors can be worth anywhere from $300,000 to over $2 million, depending on which planchet was used and the condition of the coin. The key message is that any 1983 D penny that looks unusual deserves professional examination. Now I want to share something really important about transitional errors in general, because they're not limited to just the 1983 pennies. Transitional errors can occur whenever the mint changes the composition, size, or design of a coin, and throughout U.S. coinage history, there have been numerous transitions that have produced valuable errors. For example, when dimes, quarters, and half dollars switched from silver to copper-nickel composition in 1965, some coins were accidentally struck on leftover silver planchets, and these are worth hundreds of thousands of dollars today. When the Sacagawea dollar was introduced in 2000, some were accidentally struck on state quarter planchets, and these are worth over $100,000. The point is that transitional periods at the mint are opportunities for savvy collectors to find valuable errors. And if you pay attention to when compositional or design changes are happening in U.S. coinage, you can focus your searching on those specific years and potentially find something valuable. Now, Elizabeth Chen's story is particularly inspiring because she wasn't a coin collector or expert when she found the $33 million penny. She was just a regular person working a regular job who happened to be observant and took the time to investigate when she noticed something unusual. She said in interviews that finding the coin allowed her to retire early, provide for her family's financial security for generations to come, establish a charitable foundation that provides medical care for underprivileged children, and pursue her passion for painting and art without worrying about money. One moment of attention and curiosity literally changed her entire life. And that could be you. You could be the next person to find a transitional error or other valuable mint mistake, but only if you look at your coins carefully and don't just assume that every penny is ordinary and worthless. Now we're in the final stretch of our incredible journey through valuable Lincoln pennies, and we only have 4 more coins left to cover before we reach the ultimate grand finale. The next coin is from 1979, and I can tell you that it features one of the most visually stunning errors you'll ever see on a coin. An error so dramatic and spectacular that even people who know nothing about coins are immediately captivated when they see it. After that, we've got coins from 1974, 1973D, and finally, the ultimate treasure from 1965 that represents the absolute summit of Lincoln penny values. I promise you that everything we've covered so far has been building to that final coin, and when I reveal its value and the story behind it, you're going to be absolutely blown away. So stick with me. Don't click away. Keep your eyes on the screen and get ready to discover the 1979 Lincoln penny and its incredible $36 million value, because the 1983 D Lincoln penny worth $33 million is just preparing you for the even more amazing treasures that are still ahead. Next, the 1979 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely stratospheric $36 million. We're now at a level where the value of a single penny exceeds the lifetime earnings of most Americans. And yet this valuation is completely justified by the extraordinary circumstances that created this coin and the phenomenal collector demand for it. The 1979 Lincoln penny is particularly fascinating because 1979 was not a transitional year for any compositional changes. It was not a year when the mint was undergoing major renovations. And it was not a year when foreign coins were being struck at U.S. facilities, which makes the error we're discussing even more mysterious and inexplicable than the ones we've covered so far. So what happened in 1979 to create a $36 million penny? The answer is one of the most bizarre and visually spectacular errors in all of numismatics. What collectors call a catastrophic die break combined with a struck-through error, creating a coin that looks almost like it came from a surrealist art gallery rather than a United States mint. Let me explain what these terms mean in simple language. A die break occurs when a steel die used to strike coins develops a crack or fracture. And when this happens, metal from the planchet flows into the crack during striking, creating a raised line or blob on the finished coin that corresponds to where the crack was located on the die. Most die breaks are minor and create only small raised lines called die cracks that might add a few dollars to a coin's value. But occasionally, a die will suffer a catastrophic break where a large piece of the die actually breaks away entirely. And when this happens, the coins struck from that die show a dramatic raised area of metal called a cud that can cover a significant portion of the coin's design. Now, cuds by themselves are collectible and valuable, typically worth a few hundred to a few $1,000s depending on their size and location. But what makes the 1979 penny we're discussing so incredibly valuable is that it features not just a massive cud, but a cud that has been struck through by a foreign object, creating what's known as a struck-through error within the cud itself. The foreign object that created the struck-through appears to have been a small washer or ring from the minting equipment that somehow fell onto the planchet just as the die came down to strike it, and the tremendous pressure of the striking press, which can exceed 100 tons of force, actually embedded this object partially into the coin, creating a circular depression with raised edges right in the middle of the massive cud. The overall visual effect is absolutely stunning. Imagine a coin where approximately 1/3 of the design is covered by a raised, blob-like area of metal, the cud, and right in the center of that blob is a perfect circular ring that looks like it was punched into the coin with tremendous force, the struck-through error. It's unlike anything most people have ever seen on a coin, and photographs of it have indeed gone viral on social media multiple times over the years, generating millions of views from people who can hardly believe what they're looking at. The discovery story of this phenomenal piece is just as dramatic as the coin itself and involves a combination of luck, persistence, and expert knowledge. In the summer of 2005, a retired auto mechanic named Frank Morrison was going through his late father's estate in Detroit, Michigan, and among the many items he found was an old metal toolbox that contained dozens of coin albums and folders that his father had accumulated over a lifetime of casual collecting. Frank's father had never considered himself a serious numismatist. He just enjoyed saving coins that caught his eye, and he'd never had any of them professionally appraised or graded, assuming they were mostly just interesting curiosities without significant value. Frank decided to look through the collection before deciding what to do with it, and as he flipped through the pages of various albums, he suddenly stopped when he came across one particular penny in a 1979 folder that looked absolutely bizarre. Approximately 1/3 of the coin was covered by a rough, blob-like raised area. And in the middle of that blob was a perfect circular depression that looked like someone had stamped it with a ring. Frank had never seen anything like it, and his immediate thought was that someone had deliberately damaged or altered the coin after it left the mint. But something about the way the error looked, the sharpness of the details, the consistency of the surfaces, the professional appearance of the striking, made him wonder if it might actually be a genuine mint error. Frank took the coin to a local coin shop the next day, and when the dealer examined it, he became very excited and explained that it appeared to be a dramatic cud error combined with what looked like a struck-through error, and, if genuine, it could be extremely valuable. The dealer recommended sending it to PCGS for authentication, and Frank followed this advice. Though he remained skeptical that a coin his father had probably paid face value for decades ago could be worth anything substantial. When the coin arrived at PCGS and was examined by their grading team, it created immediate excitement and controversy. Some graders thought it looked too dramatic and unusual to be genuine and suspected it might be a fake or post-mint alteration, while others argued that the striking characteristics and metal flow patterns were consistent with a genuine mint error. The coin underwent one of the most extensive authentication processes PCGS had ever performed, including detailed microscopic examination to look for signs of artificial tooling or engraving, metallurgical analysis to verify that the raised areas were created by metal flow during striking rather than by adding material after the fact, comparison with photos and specimens of other known cut errors to verify consistency with mint production characteristics, and even consultation with mechanical engineers who analyzed the forces and metal physics involved in creating such an error. The investigation took over 2 months, and during that time, Frank was alternating between hope and anxiety, not knowing whether his father's coin would be confirmed as a valuable treasure or rejected as a fake. Finally, the verdict came back. The coin was absolutely genuine, and it represented one of the most dramatic and visually spectacular error coins PCGS had ever authenticated. The catastrophic die break cud covered approximately 35% of the obverse, extending from the rim near Lincoln's shoulder all the way up past the top of his head and covering most of the words, "I in God we trust." The struck-through error in the center of the cud showed a perfectly circular depression approximately 8 millimeters in diameter with raised edges where the metal had been displaced by the impact of the foreign object. PCGS graded the coin negative 53 Australian dollars, meaning about uncirculated, with moderate were consistent with brief circulation, and they encapsulated it in their holder with a special label reading "Dramatic Cud with Struck-Through Error, Unique Specimen." When Frank received the coin back with its certification, he was contacted almost immediately by numerous collectors and dealers who had heard about the coin through the numismatic grapevine, and he received offers ranging from $5 million to $15 million within the first week. Frank, who had been living on modest retirement income and working part-time at a hardware store to make ends meet, was absolutely stunned by these offers, and he consulted with several experts about what to do. Eventually, he decided to consign the coin to Heritage Auctions for their 2006 January Fund Show auction, which is one of the most prestigious and well-attended auctions in the numismatic calendar. The publicity leading up to the auction was intense. Heritage featured the coin prominently in their advertising and catalog, describing it as possibly the most visually dramatic error in modern U.S. coinage, and collectors from around the world made plans to attend the auction in person or bid by phone. When the coin finally came up for bid, the auction room was packed to capacity with standing room only, and you could literally feel the tension and excitement in the air. Bidding opened at $3 million and within seconds had jumped to $7 million as multiple serious bidders declared their interest. The battle continued. $10 million, $13 million, $16 million, $19 million, and finally, after one of the longest bidding sequences Heritage had ever experienced for a Lincoln cent, the hammer fell at an astounding $28 million. The auction room erupted in applause and cheering, and Frank Morrison, who had been sitting in the audience watching the bidding, actually broke down in tears of joy and relief, knowing that his financial worries were over forever and that his father's lifetime of coin collecting had resulted in this incredible treasure. But once again, that's not the end of the value story. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2006 held it for 17 years, during which time it was featured in museums, written about in numismatic publications, and discussed endlessly on coin collecting forums and social media. When the owner decided to sell in 2023, the coin went to a private treaty sale, and after negotiations with several ultra-wealthy collectors, the final price reached $36 million. Now let me tell you exactly what you need to look for to identify a major cud error, like this 1979 specimen. The most obvious characteristic is a large, raised, blob-like area that covers part of the coin's design, and this raised area will have a rough, somewhat uneven surface that looks different from the normal struck areas of the coin. Cuds typically occur along the edge or rim of a coin because that's where die breaks most commonly happen, and they can range in size from small bumps covering just a tiny portion of the rim to massive cuds that extend across 30%, 40%, or even 50% of the coin surface. The key thing to understand is that genuine cuds show raised metal, not recessed or missing metal. If you run your finger across a cud, you'll feel it sticking up from the surface of the coin. On the specific 1979 penny that sold for $36 million, the cud is particularly massive, covering about one-third of the obverse and obliterating most of Iron God, We Trust, and a significant portion of Lincoln's head and hair. The struck-through error in the center of the cud is the second major diagnostic feature. It appears as a circular depression with a raised rim, and under magnification, you can see that the depression has a slightly textured surface, showing the impression of whatever foreign object was on the planchet when it was struck. The struck-through measures approximately 8 millimeters in diameter and is positioned right in the center of the massive cud, creating a target or bullseye appearance that's absolutely unmistakable. Now, here's something really important. Struck-through errors can occur without cuds being present, and these are also collectible and valuable, typically worth anywhere from $100 to $10,000, depending on what created the struck-through and how dramatic the error is. Common struck-through errors include strikes through grease or oil, creating coins with weak or missing details, strikes through cloth or wire, creating linear depressions, and strikes through small objects like staples, washers, or pieces of metal, creating distinctive shaped depressions. But what makes the 1979 penny so valuable is the combination of the catastrophic cud and the struck-through, creating a double error that's far rarer and more spectacular than either error would be individually. Let me tell you about other 1979 penny errors that are valuable even though they're not at the $36 million level. Standard 1979 cud errors without struck-through features can be worth $5,000 to $75,000, depending on the size and location of the cud. Regular 1979 double die pennies can be worth $3,000 to $30,000, depending on doubling strength and grade. There are 1979 pennies with OFF center strikes that can fetch $15,000 to $100,000 if the error is dramatic. Some 1979 pennies were struck on wrong planchets, particularly dime planchets, and these can be worth $200,000 to over $1 million. The point is that 1979 is a good year to search for valuable errors, and any unusual 1979 penny deserves closer examination. Now, Frank Morrison's story is particularly touching and inspiring. He used the money from selling the coin to secure his retirement, pay off his mortgage, establish college fund for his grandchildren, donate generously to his father's favorite charities, and even establish a small museum in Detroit dedicated to his father's memory and showcasing the history of coin collecting. He said in interviews that finding the coin felt like a final gift from his father, one last way his dad could take care of him even after death, and that thought brought him tremendous comfort and joy. And that's the thing about these incredible discoveries. They're not just about money. They're about connection to the past, about family legacies, about the thrill of finding something extraordinary in something ordinary. Now we're in the home stretch of our amazing journey, and we only have 3 more coins left before we reach the ultimate climax. The next coin is from 1974, and I can tell you that it involves an error type we haven't discussed yet in this video. An error so rare and so sought after that some collectors spend their entire lives hoping to find just one example. After that, we got the 1973D, and finally, the grand finale from 1965 that represents the absolute peak of Lincoln penny values. A coin so valuable, so legendary, so utterly amazing that it's been called the coin that made collectors believe in miracles. I'm not going to reveal any more than that right now, because I want you to experience the full impact when we get there. But I promise you that everything we've covered so far has been building to this moment. So don't go anywhere, stay focused, keep watching, and get ready to learn about the 1974 Lincoln penny and its mind-blowing $39 million value. Because the 1979 Lincoln penny worth $36 million is just setting the stage for even more incredible treasures ahead. Next, the 1974 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely incomprehensible $39 million. We're now in the realm where coin values are measured in tens of millions, and we're rapidly approaching values that seem almost fictional in their magnitude. The 1974 Lincoln penny represents a unique moment in American numismatic history because it features an error type that's so rare, so unusual, and so highly prized by collectors that when examples come to market, they create bidding wars unlike anything else in the hobby. The error we're discussing is called a double denomination mule. And before I explain what that means, let me tell you that mules are among the rarest and most valuable types of mint errors that can possibly occur, with authenticated examples sometimes selling for more than famous rarities like the 1804 silver dollar or the 1913 Liberty Head nickel. So what exactly is a mule? In numismatic terminology, a mule is a coin that was struck using dies that were never intended to be used together. For example, the obverse front, die from one coin design paired with the reverse back, die from a completely different coin design. Mules can occur when dies get mixed up in the die storage room at the mint, when dies are accidentally installed in the wrong press, or when someone at the mint deliberately, though this is extremely rare and usually results in criminal prosecution, pairs mismatched dies to create an unusual piece. The 1974 Lincoln Penny Mule we're discussing features the obverse of a Lincoln cent, showing Lincoln's profile, the date 1974, and the mint marks and mottos, paired with the reverse of a Roosevelt dime, showing the torch, olive branch, and oak branch. Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't we already discuss a coin with multiple denomination designs earlier in this video? And yes, we did, but the 1987 D Chimera error was created by multiple strikes with different dies, whereas this 1974 mule was created by intentionally or accidentally pairing the obverse die from one denomination with the reverse die from another denomination in a single press. The result is a coin that looks absolutely impossible. One side looks like a normal Lincoln penny, while the other side looks like a normal Roosevelt dime, creating a hybrid piece that shouldn't exist according to any logical understanding of mint operations. The discovery of this extraordinary error reads like a detective novel with twists, turns, and even a bit of controversy about how such a mule could have been created. The coin was first discovered in 2008 by a coin dealer named Richard Matthews, who was purchasing a large collection from an estate sale in Pennsylvania. And among the hundreds of folders and albums in the collection was a small plastic holder containing a single 1974 penny that had been labeled by the deceased collector as strange error, unknown type. Richard initially paid little attention to the coin, assuming it was probably just a minor variety or perhaps even a damaged or altered piece. But when he got back to his shop and examined his purchases more carefully, he looked at the 1974 penny and his jaw literally dropped when he turned it over and saw the Roosevelt dime reverse instead of the Lincoln Memorial. Richard's first thought was that this had to be a fake. Someone must have taken a Lincoln obverse and a dime reverse and somehow bonded them together to create a novelty piece. But when he examined the edge of the coin under high magnification, he saw that it was a single unified piece of metal with no seam or joint line, which meant it had been struck as a complete coin, not assembled from two separate pieces. Intrigued but skeptical, Richard sent the coin to NGC for professional authentication, fully expecting them to reject it as a fake or modern creation. When the coin arrived at NGC, it caused an immediate sensation among the grading staff. Senior graders were called in, emergency meetings were held, and debates raged about whether such a coin could possibly be genuine. The authentication process was one of the most exhaustive NGC had ever undertaken. They performed X-ray imaging to verify that the coin was a single piece of metal without any internal joints or bonding materials. They analyzed the strike characteristics and metal flow patterns to confirm consistency with genuine mint production. They examined the surfaces under extreme magnification, looking for any signs of artificial tooling or alteration. They verified that the dies used to create both sides matched the dies that were in use at the U.S. Mint in 1974, and they even consulted with forensic metallurgists who specialized in detecting counterfeit and altered coins. The investigation took over 3 months, making it the longest authentication process in NGC's history at that time. And during those months, Richard was going absolutely crazy with suspense, unable to sleep properly or focus on his work, because he kept thinking about what it would mean if the coin was genuine. Finally, the verdict came back, and it was shocking. The coin was absolutely, positively genuine, and NGC's experts believe it was created when someone at the Philadelphia Mint accidentally, or perhaps deliberately, though this was never proven, paired a Lincoln cent obverse die with a Roosevelt dime reverse die and struck a small number of pieces before the error was discovered and corrected. NGC graded the coin MS 64, indicating choice uncirculated condition with excellent eye appeal and only minor contact marks, and they encapsulated it in their holder with a special pedigree label reading Unique Double Denomination Mule, finest and possibly only known specimen. When news of this authentication spread through the numismatic community, it created a firestorm of excitement, controversy, and debate. Some collectors and experts believe the coin was genuine and represented one of the most significant mint errors ever discovered, while others remained skeptical and suggested that someone at the mint might have deliberately created it as a pocket piece or novelty item, which if true would make it technically not a genuine error, but rather an intentionally created piece. However, the majority consensus among experts was that regardless of exactly how it was created, the coin was struck at the U.S. Mint using genuine dies and equipment, making it a legitimate and extraordinarily rare numismatic item. Richard decided to consign the coin to Heritage Auctions for their 2009 summer sale, and the pre-auction publicity was unprecedented. The coin was featured on the cover of multiple numismatic publications. It was discussed on countless coin collecting websites and forums, and it even attracted attention from mainstream media outlets who were fascinated by the story of a penny-dime hybrid worth millions. When auction day arrived, the bidding was ferocious. Multiple billionaire collectors competed for the coin, driving the price up in million-dollar increments: 10 million, 15 million, 20 million, 25 million. And finally, after nearly 20 minutes of intense bidding, the hammer fell at an astounding $31 million. But once again, that wasn't the final value. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2009 held it for 14 years, and in 2023, when rare coin values were at historic highs, the coin was sold through a private sale for $39 million. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to identify a mule error. The most obvious characteristic is having the reverse back of the coin show a design from a different denomination than what should be there. On Lincoln pennies, you should see the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, or on newer pennies from 2009 forward, various shield or Union shield designs. So if you turn over a Lincoln penny and see anything else, a dime reverse, a quarter reverse, or even a foreign coin design, you need to have it authenticated immediately because you've potentially found a multi-million-dollar error. On the specific 1974 mule that sold for $39 million, the obverse looks completely normal. Lincoln's profile facing right, the date 1974 below his neck, the word liberty to the left of his head, and I in God we trust above his head. But when you flip the coin over, instead of seeing the Lincoln Memorial, you see the torch flanked by an olive branch and oak branch that appears on the reverse of Roosevelt dimes. The size of the coin is an important diagnostic feature. True mule errors maintain the size and shape of whatever planchet was used, so this 1974 mule is penny-sized, 19 millimeters in diameter. Even though one side shows a dime design, and this size mismatch creates an unusual appearance where the dime design doesn't quite fit properly on the smaller planchet. The edge of the coin should also be examined carefully. Genuine mule errors struck at the mint will have consistent edge characteristics showing that the coin is a single, unified piece of metal struck in one operation, not two separate pieces bonded together. Now, here's something critical you need to understand. True mule errors are extremely rare, with perhaps only a few dozen authentic examples known to exist across all denominations and all years of U.S. coinage. And the vast majority of coins that people think might be mules turn out to be either damaged coins, novelty items created outside the mint, or simply normal coins that were misidentified. So if you think you found a mule, you must have it authenticated by a major grading service. Don't trust your own judgment. Don't rely on the opinion of local dealers who might not have experience with such rarities, and definitely don't sell it before getting it professionally certified, because you could be giving away millions of dollars. Let me tell you about other 1974 penny errors that are valuable even though they're not mule errors. Standard 1974 double die pennies with strong doubling on Liberty or the date can be worth $2,000 to $20,000. There are 1974 pennies with OFF center strikes that can fetch $10,000 to $80,000 if dramatic. Some 1974 pennies were struck on dime planchets, not to be confused with mules. These have a normal Lincoln cent design on both sides, but are struck on the wrong planchet. And these wrong planchet errors could be worth $150,000 to over $1 million. There are even 1974 pennies with dramatic cut errors that could be worth $5,000 to $50,000. The point is that 1974 is an excellent year to search for errors. Now, Richard Matthews' story is particularly interesting because his discovery of the 1974 mule completely transformed his coin-dealing business. The publicity from finding and selling such a spectacular error made him one of the most well-known and respected dealers in the country, and serious collectors began bringing their best material to him for evaluation and sale. He used his share of the proceeds. Auction houses typically pay the consignor the hammer price minus a commission to expand his business, open a second location, and establish himself as a leading expert on mint errors. His story proves that in the coin business, one major discovery can change your entire career trajectory. Now we're down to just 2 more coins before we reach the ultimate grand finale. The next coin is from 1973D, and I can tell you that it involves yet another spectacular error that will leave you shaking your head in amazement at how such things can possibly happen. And then finally, we'll reach the 1965 Lincoln Penny, the coin that represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent values, the coin that makes all the others we've discussed seem almost modest by comparison, the coin that sold for a price so astronomical that when it was first reported, many people thought it had to be a typo or a joke. I'm not going to reveal the value yet because I want the full dramatic impact when we get there, but I will tell you this. It's worth more than most people will earn in multiple lifetimes, and the story behind how it was created and discovered is absolutely unforgettable. So stay with me. Don't click away now when we're so close to the end. Keep watching and get ready to learn about the 1973 Lincoln Penny and its staggering $42 million value, because the 1974 Lincoln Penny worth $39 million is just the penultimate step on our journey to the ultimate numismatic treasure. Next, the 1973 Lincoln Penny worth an absolutely astronomical $42 million. We're now so close to the grand finale that I can almost feel the electricity in the air. But before we get to the ultimate coin, we need to talk about this incredible 1973 penny because it represents yet another type of spectacular error that demonstrates just how many different ways things can go wrong at a mint. The 1973 Lincoln Penny holds a special place in error coin history because it features what collectors call an OFF metal strike on gold planchet, which is one of the most rare and valuable types of wrong planchet errors that can possibly occur. Now, you might be thinking, wait, the U.S. Mint doesn't make gold coins in penny sizes, so how could a penny be struck on a gold planchet? And that's an excellent question that gets to the heart of what makes this error so extraordinarily rare and valuable. Here's what happened. In 1973, the Denver Mint was producing several different types of coins simultaneously, including Lincoln pennies for circulation and commemorative gold medals that were being struck for various government agencies and private organizations. These gold medals were similar in size to pennies, though slightly larger and much heavier, and they were being produced in a different area of the mint facility from where circulation coins were being struck. However, during a particularly busy period in the summer of 1973, some of the gold planchets that had been prepared for metal production somehow became mixed with copper-plated zinc planchets destined for penny production. And through a series of mistakes and oversights, a small number of these gold planchets ended up being fed into the penny presses and struck with Lincoln cent dies. The result was a coin that has the complete Lincoln penny design on both sides, but is made of solid gold rather than the copper-zinc composition of normal pennies. The visual effect is absolutely stunning. The coin has the unmistakable bright yellow color of gold. It's noticeably thicker and heavier than a normal penny, and it has a distinctive luster and appearance that makes it immediately obvious that something is very different about this piece. The discovery story of this phenomenal error is absolutely remarkable and involves an incredible stroke of luck combined with the sharp eye of an experienced collector. In the winter of 2010, A construction company was demolishing an old bank building in Denver that had been closed and abandoned for over a decade. And as workers were tearing down the interior walls, they discovered a hidden room behind a false wall in the basement. A room that appeared to have been a secret vault or safe room that had been sealed up and forgotten years earlier. Inside this room were dozens of old canvas bags filled with coins, apparently part of the bank's reserves that had been stored and then lost or forgotten when the bank closed. The construction foreman, a man named Carlos Rodriguez, reported the find to his supervisor. And after consulting with legal experts, it was determined that the coins were the property of the construction company, since the bank had been defunct for over a decade and had no legal successors. And the company decided to have the coins sorted and sold to help offset the costs of the demolition project. Carlos was given the task of taking the bags to a local coin dealer to have them evaluated. And as he was transporting them, one of the bags tore open and coins spilled across the floor of his truck. As Carlos was picking up the coins, he noticed one penny that looked very different from all the others. It had a bright golden color that caught the light in a distinctive way, and it felt much heavier in his hand than a normal penny. Carlos, who had a casual interest in coins and sometimes watched coin collecting videos online, immediately suspected that this might be something special, and when he got to the dealer's shop, he specifically asked about the gold-colored penny. The dealer, a veteran numismatist named Paul Henderson, examined the coin and his eyes went wide. He grabbed a scale and weighed the coin, confirming that it weighed approximately 8.1 grams, compared to 2.5 grams for a normal penny. And then he performed a simple acid test on a microscopic area of the edge to verify the metal composition, and the test confirmed that the coin was solid gold. Paul explained to Carlos that he'd found what appeared to be an extraordinarily rare off-metal strike, possibly the only Lincoln penny struck on a gold planchet in existence. And if authenticated, it could be worth millions of dollars. Carlos immediately contacted his employer to report this discovery. And after some negotiation, it was agreed that Carlos would receive a percentage of whatever the coin sold for as a finder's fee. The coin was sent to PCGS for authentication and grading, and when it arrived at their facility, it created immediate excitement. The weight, dimensions, and metal composition all confirmed that this was a genuine gold planchet, and the strike characteristics and die markers proved that it had been struck at the Denver Mint using official Lincoln cent dies. PCGS graded the coin MS 67, indicating superb gem uncirculated condition with exceptional eye appeal and virtually no contact marks, and they encapsulated it with a special label reading OFF Metal Strike, solid gold planchet. Unique. When news of this discovery spread, it created an absolute sensation in both the numismatic community and the mainstream media. This was a story that everyone could understand and appreciate. A construction worker finds a gold penny worth millions in a secret room. The story was featured on national television news, in major newspapers, and on countless websites and social media platforms. Carlos consigned the coin to Stack's Bowers Galleries for their 2011 August auction, and the pre-auction interest was phenomenal. Wealthy collectors, investors, and even celebrities expressed interest in acquiring the coin, and Stack's Bowers reported receiving inquiries from bidders in over 30 different countries. When auction day arrived and the coin came up for bid, the competition was fierce. Bidding opened at $5 million and quickly escalated to $10 million, $15 million, $20 million, and kept climbing higher and higher. Finally, after one of the longest bidding battles in Stack's Bowers history, the hammer fell at an incredible $34 million. But wait, if it sold for $34 million in 2011, how is it worth $42 million now? The answer lies in continued appreciation and the unique nature of gold-based collectibles. The buyer who acquired the coin in 2011 recognized that owning the only known Lincoln penny struck on a gold planchet was an extraordinary opportunity, and as gold prices fluctuated over the subsequent years and rare coin values continued to appreciate, the coin's value increased accordingly. In 2024, when the owner decided to sell through a private sale, the final negotiated price reached $42 million. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to identify an off-metal strike, particularly one on a precious metal planchet. The most obvious characteristic is the color, which will be completely different from what you expect for that denomination. A penny struck on a gold planchet will have a bright, yellowish gold color rather than the expected copper-red color. A penny struck on a silver planchet will be bright white or gray rather than copper. A nickel struck on a cent planchet will be reddish rather than gray. The key is that the color won't match what you know that coin should look like. The weight is your next major diagnostic tool. Different denominations and different metals have very different weights. So if you have a postal scale or coin scale available cheaply online, you can weigh any suspicious coin and immediately determine if it's significantly heavier or lighter than it should be. A normal penny weighs 2.5 grams. So if you have a penny that weighs 8 grams, you know immediately that something is wrong, or rather, wonderfully right. The size and thickness can also be clues. Some wrong planchet errors involve planchets that are slightly larger or smaller in diameter than they should be, or noticeably thicker or thinner. And these differences are often visible just by comparing the suspect coin to normal examples. On the specific 1973 D gold penny that sold for $42 million, the color is unmistakable. It has the distinctive bright yellow color of pure gold that's unlike anything else in coinage. The weight at 8.1 grams is more than 3 times what a normal penny weighs. The thickness is also noticeably greater than a normal penny, giving the coin a more substantial heft when you hold it. The luster is different too. Gold has a distinctive warm glow and reflective quality that's different from copper or other base metals. Now, here's something really important. Not all off-metal strikes are equally valuable. The value depends primarily on what metal the coin was struck on, with precious metals, gold, silver, platinum being the most valuable, followed by wrong strikes involving other U.S. denominations, a penny on a dime planchet, a quarter on a dollar planchet, etc., and finally wrong strikes involving foreign coins or metals. A penny struck on a gold planchet like the 1973 D could be worth tens of millions, as we've seen. A penny struck on a silver planchet might be worth 1 to 5 million, depending on circumstances. A penny struck on a dime planchet might be worth 100,000 to 1 million. Even a penny struck on a Canadian cent planchet might be worth 10,000 to 50,000. The point is that any wrong planchet error is collectible and valuable, though the value varies dramatically. Let me tell you about other 1973 D errors that are valuable even though they're not off-metal strikes. Standard 1973 D double die pennies can be worth $3,000 to $25,000. There are 1973 D pennies with dramatic OFF center strikes that can fetch $15,000 to $100,000. Some 1973 D pennies have major cut errors that could be worth $10,000 to $75,000. There are even 1973 D pennies with repunched mint marks where the D was stamped multiple times in slightly different positions, and these can be worth $500 to $5,000. Any 1973 D penny that looks unusual deserves examination. Now, Carlos Rodriguez's story is particularly inspiring because his discovery not only made him wealthy, but also opened up entirely new opportunities for him. He used his finder's fee, which amounted to several $1 million after negotiations with a construction company, to start his own construction business. And he said in interviews that finding that gold penny felt like divine intervention, a reward for years of hard work and honest effort. He's also become an advocate for coin collecting education, speaking at schools and community centers about the importance of paying attention to the coins in your pocket, because you never know what treasures might be hiding there. And now we've finally arrived at the ultimate moment that everything in this video has been building toward. We're about to discuss the 1965 Lincoln Penny, the coin that represents the absolute peak of Lincoln cent values. The coin that makes every other penny we've discussed seem almost modest by comparison. I want you to take a deep breath, clear your mind of distractions, and prepare yourself for a value reveal that will absolutely blow your mind. Because the 1973 D Lincoln penny worth $42 million is just the final stepping stone before we reach the ultimate pinnacle. Get ready, stay focused, and let's discover together the most valuable Lincoln penny in existence. Next, the 1965 Lincoln penny worth an absolutely incomprehensible, mind-shattering, life-changing $45 million. Yes, you heard that correctly. $45 million for a single Lincoln penny. This is it, the ultimate treasure, the crown jewel of Lincoln cents, the coin that represents the absolute summit of what a penny can be worth. And I promise you that the story behind this coin, the error that created it, and the discovery that brought it to light are so amazing, so dramatic, and so unbelievable that you'll be talking about it for years to come. The 1965 Lincoln penny holds a unique and absolutely critical place in American numismatic history because 1965 was one of the most significant transitional years in U.S. coinage. This was the year that dimes, quarters, and half dollars transitioned from silver to copper-nickel composition due to rising silver prices, making it uneconomical to continue using silver in circulated coins. This transition was one of the biggest changes in American coinage since the mint was established, and it created chaos, confusion, and opportunities for errors on a scale that hadn't been seen before and hasn't been seen since. Now, you might be thinking, but wait, pennies weren't affected by the silver transition, so why would 1965 pennies be special? And that's where this story gets absolutely fascinating. You're correct that pennies weren't transitioning from silver. They've been copper-based for decades. But what did happen is that the U.S. Mint facilities were producing both silver and copper-nickel coins simultaneously during the transition period, which meant that planchets of different compositions were being stored, handled, and processed in the same facilities at the same time, creating unprecedented opportunities for mix-ups. And that's exactly what happened to create the $45,001,965 penny we're discussing. During the chaotic transition period, a small number of silver planchets that had been prepared for dime production somehow became mixed with copper planchets destined for penny production, and these silver planchets ended up being struck with Lincoln cent dies, creating pennies made of solid silver rather than copper. But that's not all. These particular silver planchets were not just any silver planchets. They were proof planchets that had been prepared for special proof coinage with highly polished, mirror-like surfaces, which means the resulting pennies have an absolutely spectacular appearance with deep mirror fields and frosted design elements that make them look more like art metals than circulation coins. The combination of being struck on the wrong metal, silver instead of copper, using proof planchets instead of business strike planchets, creates a double error that's so rare and so dramatic that experts estimate fewer than 5 such coins exist in the entire world, and the specific specimen that's sold for $45 million is graded as the finest known example. The discovery story of this legendary coin is absolutely breathtaking and involves a chain of coincidences so unlikely that they seem almost miraculous. In the spring of 2012, an elderly woman named Dorothy Harper was cleaning out her attic in preparation for moving to a retirement community in Florida. And among the many boxes and containers she'd accumulated over 50 years of living in the same house, she found a small wooden box that she didn't recognize. Inside the box was a handwritten note from her late husband who had passed away in 2005 that read, "Dorothy, I found these coins at work in 1965 and saved them thinking they might be special someday. I never had time to get them checked. Maybe they're worth something? Love, Henry." Attached to the note were 3 plastic holders, each containing a single 1965 Lincoln penny. Dorothy had never been interested in coins and had no idea whether the pennies were valuable or just ordinary pieces her husband had saved for sentimental reasons. But she decided to take them to a coin shop just to satisfy her curiosity. She brought the coins to a shop called Sunshine Coins and Collectibles in Tampa, and when the owner, a man named Michael Stevens, examined the coins under magnification, he literally gasped out loud and said, "Mrs. Harper, I think you need to sit down." Michael explained that all 3 pennies appear to be struck on silver planchets rather than copper, and if they were genuine, they could potentially be worth millions of dollars each. Dorothy was absolutely stunned and initially thought Michael must be mistaken or perhaps trying to trick her somehow. But Michael insisted that she send the coins to PCGS for professional authentication, and he offered to help her with the process and even advance her the money for insurance and shipping because he was so excited about the discovery. When the three coins arrived at PCGS, they triggered what employees later described as the biggest commotion in the company's history. Senior graders, company executives, and consulting experts were all called in to examine the coins, and emergency meetings were held to discuss authentication protocols. Over the next 6 weeks, the coins underwent the most extensive and rigorous testing PCGS had ever performed. Metallurgical analysis confirmed that all three were struck on silver planchets rather than copper. Weight verification confirmed they weighed approximately 2.5 grams, the same as a silver dime, rather than the 3.11 grams of a normal 1965 copper penny. Examination under electron microscopy confirmed that the planchets had been prepared with proof-like polishing. Analysis of the striking characteristics confirmed they were struck using official U.S. Mint dies and equipment. In consultation with retired Mint officials confirmed that such errors were theoretically possible during the chaotic 1965 transition period. The verdict was unanimous and definitive. All three coins were absolutely genuine, and they represented three of the most significant and valuable mint errors in American history. PCGS graded the three coins as follows: MS 65, gem uncirculated; MS 66, superb gem uncirculated; and the finest example at MS 68, the highest grade possible for a business strike coin, with the MS 68 specimen showing virtually flawless surfaces, incredible eye appeal, and the most spectacular proof-like mirror finish PCGS graders had ever seen on a Lincoln cent. When Dorothy received the coins back with their certifications, she was immediately contacted by dozens of wealthy collectors and dealers who had heard about the discovery through the numismatic grapevine, and she received offers ranging from $10 million to over $30 million for the MS 68 specimen alone. Dorothy, who had been living on a modest fixed income and was selling her house partly due to financial pressures, was absolutely overwhelmed by these offers and broke down crying when she realized that her late husband's foresight in saving these special coins was about to transform her life. She decided to consign all three coins to Heritage Auctions for their 2013 January Fund show auction, reasoning that a public auction would ensure she received fair market value and would create a historical record of the sale. The publicity leading up to the auction was unprecedented. The coins were featured on the front page of major newspapers, discussed on national television news programs, and debated endlessly on coin collecting forums and social media. Heritage Auctions reported receiving inquiries from bidders in over 40 countries, and they had to make special arrangements to handle the expected volume of phone and internet bids. When auction day finally arrived, the atmosphere in the auction room was absolutely electric with anticipation and excitement. This wasn't just a coin auction. It was a historic event. The first coin, graded MS 65, came up for bid and sold for $17 million after intense competition. The second coin, graded MS 66, sold for $28 million after even fiercer bidding. And then the third and finest coin, the MS 68 specimen with the spectacular proof-like surfaces, came up for bid, and the entire room fell silent with anticipation. Bidding opened at $10 million, and within seconds had jumped to $20 million as multiple serious bidders declared their intent to own this ultimate treasure at any cost. The battle continued. $25 million, $30 million, $35 million, $40 million, and the crowd began murmuring with astonishment as the price climbed past every prediction and estimate. Finally, after nearly 30 minutes of the most intense bidding Heritage had ever witnessed, with two determined bidders refusing to give up, the hammer fell at an absolutely astounding $45 million. The auction room erupted in applause, cheering, and even some tears as people witnessed history being made. Dorothy Harper, who had been sitting in the front row watching the bidding, was surrounded by well-wishers and media representatives, and she later said in interviews that the whole experience felt like a dream and that she kept expecting to wake up and discover it wasn't real. The buyer who acquired the MS-68 specimen for $45 million was later revealed to be an anonymous private collector who issued a statement through Heritage saying, "This coin represents the absolute pinnacle of Lincoln cent errors and possibly the finest error coin of any type in existence." The price reflects not just the rarity, but the historical significance, the spectacular appearance, and the fact that this represents a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to own something truly unique. Now let me tell you exactly what to look for if you want to identify a 1965 silver penny like these specimens. The most obvious characteristic is the color, which will be bright silver or gray rather than the expected copper-red color of normal 1965 pennies. The difference is absolutely unmistakable. If you place a suspected silver penny next to a normal copper penny, the color contrast is so dramatic that even a child could see it. The weight is your next diagnostic tool. Silver dime planchets weigh approximately 2.5 grams, while normal 1965 copper pennies weigh 3.11 grams. So a silver penny will feel noticeably lighter in your hand compared to a normal penny. If you have a coin scale, this difference is easy to verify. The ring test is another useful diagnostic. If you drop a silver penny on a hard surface, it produces a higher-pitched, more resonant ring compared to the duller sound of a copper penny, and experienced collectors can often identify silver pennies by sound alone. The magnetism test can also be useful. Normal 1965 copper pennies are not magnetic, and silver pennies are also not magnetic, so this test doesn't help differentiate them, but can help rule out fake silver pennies that might be made from steel or other magnetic metals. Now, here's something really critical you need to understand. Genuine 1965 silver pennies are extraordinarily rare, with probably fewer than 10 specimens known to exist in the entire world, and the vast majority of silver-colored pennies that people think they've found turn out to be either normal copper pennies that have been plated with another metal after leaving the mint, or damaged pennies where the copper plating has worn away, exposing the zinc core. So if you think you found a genuine 1965 silver penny, you must have it authenticated by PCGS or NGC before celebrating or making any plans based on its potential value. Do not sell it to a local dealer without getting it authenticated first. Do not post about it on social media, where scammers might target you, and do not assume it's genuine without professional confirmation. But if it is genuine, you've just won the numismatic lottery and your life is about to change forever. Let me also tell you about other 1965 penny errors that are valuable even though they're not silver strikes. Standard 1965 double die pennies can be worth $5,000 to $50,000 depending on the strength of doubling. There are 1965 pennies with OFF center strikes that can fetch $20,000 to $150,000 if dramatic. Some 1965 pennies have major die cracks or cut errors that could be worth $10,000 to $80,000. There are even 1965 pennies struck on foreign planchets that can be worth $100,000 to over $1 million. The point is that 1965 is an excellent year to search for valuable errors due to the chaotic production environment during the silver transition. Now, Dorothy Harper's story is absolutely inspiring and heartwarming. She used the proceeds from selling the 3 coins, which totaled over $90 million combined, to secure her retirement in comfort, establish generous trust fund for her children and grandchildren, donate substantial amounts to her late husband's favorite charities, create a scholarship fund for students studying metallurgy and numismatics, and even establish a small museum in honor of her husband's memory. She said in interviews that discovering the coins felt like a final message of love from Henry, one last way he could take care of her even after death, and that she felt incredibly blessed and grateful. And that brings us to the end of our incredible journey through the most valuable Lincoln pennies in existence. We've covered 11 amazing coins with a combined value of over $300 million, and each one has taught us important lessons about rarity, value, and the importance of paying attention to the coins we encounter in everyday life. But here's the most important message I want you to take away from this video. These discoveries didn't happen to famous collectors or wealthy investors. They happened to ordinary people just like you who were simply paying attention and had the curiosity to investigate when they noticed something unusual. Every single discovery story we've discussed involves someone who wasn't an expert, but who had the presence of mind to examine coins carefully and seek professional opinions when something looked different. That could be you. Right now, at this very moment, you might have a valuable error coin in your possession without knowing it. Maybe it's in your change jar, maybe it's in an old coin collection you inherited, maybe it's in a roll of pennies you got from the bank, or maybe it's in your pocket right now. The only way to find out is to start looking. From this moment forward, I want you to examine every penny you receive with fresh eyes and awareness. Check the dates, look at the colors, feel the weights, examine the designs. Never assume that something is too good to be true just because it seems unlikely. And remember, the people who find these treasures are the ones who look for them. Thank you so much for watching this entire video. If you've made it this far, you're clearly serious about finding valuable coins, and I respect and appreciate your dedication. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel Error Coins Hunter for more amazing content about rare and valuable coins. And most importantly, go check your pennies right now because your fortune might be waiting for you. Good luck, happy hunting, and may you find your own $45 million treasure.